And we're live, y'all.
All right.
Welcome.
Welcome,
How's
everyone.
how's everyone doing today?
Good. Good evening and good morning, wherever you are.
Right.
Just got off work.
Oh man,
Woke up, yogurt.
I just got done doing a whole bunch of housework. So
I
what about
just
you,
got
Damien?
in from work, just got everything ready. I got quickly hit the pipe, made a tea, all the important things.
Nice.
Fuck
Did you
yeah.
get the stuff? I seen you got all the stuff up for your hoop house.
Yeah, dude, I spent the whole weekend in the garden. I got my hoops up. I haven't cut my tarp yet to fit, but I don't need to tarp for, a few weeks. But I
Oh
got
yeah.
the hoops up and I got the West Bengal Pashim Harmati in the ground. Three confirmed females. And then I have another one that's unconfirmed, and I have my Gopalpar, which I believe is a male. And then I still have one seedling coming, which is a Jaldapara. So anyway, I've got three beautiful West Bengal in the ground. They'll be in the dep, and I got them in there with some bull Oaxacan. I've got two bull Oaxacan in there, and I've got four purple Zacatecas.
Nice.
And then I've got my squirrel tail tie. They are popping up out of the dirt here this evening already, so they didn't take long to pop. So we'll get a couple females out of that, and that'll be my light depth, putting all the Landrace in the light depth so that I get a good finish.
Oh yeah.
Fuck yeah. Awesome.
What about you? Where are you fellas at? What do you got cooking there, Ryan? I know you've got something popping over there.
Right.
Let's see. This weekend I'll be
Fill us in.
this weekend I'll be harvesting all my plants that are pollinated. Seeds will be just about finished up. So
Is it just me? I'll pop back in. I can't hear him.
jeez. Yeah, male from Cryptic Labs. That is, it's called Demon Latcher, is the name of the variety, but it's a walking gold with original haze. So half Mexican male. I'm sure there's some Mexican genetics in whatever we call it, original haze. So
Oh
uh,
yeah.
putting that male on all kinds of stuff. I hit my Project Monarch. I hit my Pakistani cut. The GMO. Let's see, Aliens on Moonshine. I got a Moroccan peaches cut that got pollinated right now. A couple other things. The Indian, the Ravi Rose. Took the Ravi Rose to the Mexican haze. So we'll see what comes out of that.
Nice.
Hopefully it's fire.
Heck yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully, right?
I was impressed with the male. He had great structure, threw a bunch of inflorescence, but had enough spacing that he wasn't gonna crunch things up too much. But he was a full male. Dropped shitloads of pollen.
Nice. Did he have any trichome coverage or like anything
Nah,
like that on it?
nah, this one wasn't much of a resin male. Uh, Nothing really in particular outstanding that I can say uh, that like showed himself to me. He just really good cloner, grows pretty good vigor. So, had a
Nice.
nice little hazy hashy stem rub. We'll see what comes out of the beans.
Oh yeah.
Nice.
Do you
So
have
are we
anything
waiting
in
for sorry.
do you have anything in particular that shies you away from a male?
Oh, good question.
Yeah, just irregular growth. Those ones that just bolt like crazy, so they're just reaching for the sky and going and going and going. Those ones I don't typically go for. I want to see branching, and I want to see a good degree of the branching to where they're not too floppy and they're not too erect. Um, nothing like one thing in particular shies me away. Definitely see way less males than females, just by nature of what I do. But looking for strong stem rub, looking for good clonability, looking for nice structure, and then also when I put it outside, I want to see that it triggers, but not too fast. I want to see good flowers, big thick flowers, nice colas. Kind of try and image a female onto a male, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Doesn't translate directly across.
Yeah.
Full honesty, I don't have enough experience to tell you what I like and what I don't like in males. I can tell you what I like about my males, but I can't
Yeah.
say that they're necessarily good breeders or bad breeders.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
It's also tricky with landrace when you're talking about males. Can you guys hear me? Am I back
Yeah.
in?
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So there's, certain land races like these Northern African or Middle Eastern areas, the ones that have that semi-auto kind of early triggering trait to them. You could grow those at home in tents. And if you're not putting them in big enough pots, almost like the way an autoflower can trigger earlier in a small pot if the roots hit bottom or something like that. So depending on where that landrace is from, you might want to do a similar style like the autoflower growers do, where they put it in a big pot straight away rather than doing the small up pots. Because you might see pollen sac pop out on a short male seedling if it's, from that part of the world, and you might go, what the hell, this guy's, he's jumping to the party too early, but that's part of that genetic trait that's in that line. So it's interesting running different genetics and learning about them that way, and trying to, be able to gauge your males based on, what they are as well, not just what we like.
Yeah. I asked the question because I mainly want to know, because I know in the Beldia, since we're going on into talking about Morocco, I've heard in the Beldia that there is some auto traits. Am I correct in that, Eloise?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not an expert. One thing though is that I think the weed is called the kif.
The Kif.
Also,
Kif.
yeah.
Yeah.
So if you want to be, the kif has auto flowering, semi-auto flowering traits.
Okay.
Kif is obviously the word for the extracted trichomes as well. And then to make things more confusing, the mountains where they're grown is called the riff.
Region. Yeah.
Yeah. It's more pronounced the reef though, like REEF.
Okay. I know
Yeah.
I got my buddy Saj from Katama Select that should be popping on here around 6:30.
Nice.
He's a Moroccan grower, so we'll definitely be able to pick his brain when he comes on. And I'm excited to learn about this strain, specifically because this is one of the ones I'll be growing a lot here soon, because I want to start to transition some of my more flower strains to a flower hash strain, not keep them just flower, because a lot of the strains that I have in my library are for that. They're just for flower, because that's all I've been, is a flower smoker for a long time. But since I've been trying the hash and and doing dabs and stuff like that with rosin, as an asthmatic, it's a lot easier on my lungs to take one dab than it is to smoke an entire joint of plant material. Something about that carbon, factor in there definitely has a impact on my lungs rather than the dabs. But overall, I can do a better extraction for edibles and stuff like that with a hashier plant. So
Yeah. I think it's important to, once you're, really into it and you're doing your breeding and you're making seeds and a lot of your favorite plants, I think it's important to try to separate those, what you're doing, and find a variety that's your flower variety and something that's your hasher, and then something that makes good rosin, because they're all different, and if you can find a few varieties that are specific for those, then you can really work them in your certain directions.
Yeah, it's definitely something we've talked about before, how a lot of these plants have a specific resin type, and that'll really kind of define, not that it's the only thing you can use it for, but if you're trying to find the most efficient, right, the most resourceful way to extract something from a plant, a good hash plant's obviously going to give you more than a plant that is typically consumed for flour, and it's all based on the resin type and the wax cuticle around the trichome, what's in the leaf material, the structure, how the flower is built. Is it in a spiral pattern, or is it just a
Mhm.
big cluster, or has it got some rosettes going on where it kind of foxtails out? All those different structures lean towards being able to use that flower for a different intended purpose. You can smoke all the flowers, but if you're smoking a plant that's really just a hash plant, you're kind of missing out on a few things because it's best as a hash plant.
Yeah.
And then if you're just only extracting and washing a cut that you have because you love that cut in flour, and you're wondering why your yields are, subpar, it very well could be just that plant's resin type. So breed it with something that is more ashy, a little more open bud structure, and you'll get better extraction yield. It's all built into the plant itself. It's what you want to choose it for.
100%, for sure. I think I'll be interested to talk to your buddy when he comes on, Andy, because I think I heard that, in Morocco, I think is in the 50s before like the hippie trail, that they actually smoked keef, which may be part of the reason why they whether they call it keef, but they weren't actually making tons of hash in like before the 60s. Apparently it was a hippie, movement that kind of spurred them on to making more hash there in Morocco. And I was just doing a little bit of research, and apparently they were smoking. I don't know how, like whether they were still
They were smoking in a septi. It's a
okay.
Moroccan water. It's a Moroccan water
Sure.
pipe with a really long stem,
Right.
and you just pop the keef in there, hold a flame to it. You're good to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I was reading up and watching some stuff on it too, and I was seeing the same thing. That the hash in Morocco, even though it's known for its hash now, it really wasn't a thing up until the mid 1900s.
Yeah. Things
And
change,
so
right?
that was pretty interesting. It's almost like the Moroccan Beldia is in the process of becoming its own land race, and each region that's growing it seems to like have its own regional quality about its Beldia strain.
Well,
Like
again, the Beldia is not the Landrace. The Beldia is a
yeah,
classific. Beldia just means Landrace. So as far as that goes, you're totally right. Except that it's not developing. It has had. No one exactly knows who brought weed to the reef for the first time. It's definitely not native, and my own research has not been super conclusive. Given I only had 24 hours to prep for this live stream, I didn't really get a chance to really get stuck in. I do know a lot of people agree with what you were saying about the hash. I always kind of rejected the narrative, but I'll repeat it anyway. The idea would be that the Spanish hippies taught the Moroccans how to make hash, essentially. A lot of Moroccans don't really like hearing that. You hear the same thing in Parvati, where they're like, the Italians taught us how to make charas, but it makes no sense because, like, well, hash has been produced in Parvati for way longer than there's been Italians in Parvati, and I don't really know about hash in Morocco. It does seem like people. Why would you go to the bother of pressing it unless you had to? Loose resin's fine. It's lovely to smoke, actually. I think it's mostly a storage and transporting thing, and so for a sort of local smoker economy, where people are producing for themselves and for their friends in their villages and stuff, I don't see why there would be much of a need to press large bricks the way they do so industrially now. So I'd be willing to believe that that was a sort of more recent development. But I also wouldn't be surprised to hear that they've been making hash bricks for hundreds of years, and it's just sort of in the since the hippies came, that it really sort of picked up in any sort of scale. I'm actually just kind of waiting, to be honest with you. Like, I'm looking forward to asking your friend a lot of questions about the plant itself and about the cultivation of it and everything else. But as far as like the history and the lore and the culture goes, like, I'm waiting for Pierre, because there's him and a couple of Moroccan academics who've written. No one else has written as much on the topic as they have, and it's honestly, it was way too dense for me to skim and come back to you with the narrative in 24 hours. It's a very rich and deep history in Morocco. Yeah.
I was actually reading some of the stuff you sent, and man, I'm like, I cannot take in everything I'm going to need to take in before this. I kind of want to do a second round once we're able to once I'm able to get in and actually read some of those articles that you sent, because they're very interesting. And one of the things that gets me is the pollen activity in the area, and how some of the local plants will take pollen, some won't. That the triploid aspect of it, like that.
Yeah,
that's got me that's got me very interested in the plant, and how how that all came about.
I'm kind of focused on that recent trip that Nat Pennington with Humboldt Seed Company did to Morocco, where, which is really cool. If anyone hasn't seen it, check it out. Really eye-opening. It's a great documentary. They are showing what's going on out there, the new kind of legal movement, which is awesome. I think they have, who's out there with them?
Ed Rosenthal.
Yeah, Ed Rosenthal was out there with them. But, they're trying to convince them maybe to use some of the triploids out there, so that they're not catching the pollen, because there is literally a sky full of pollen for a few months out there. And I think the idea is, because Morocco, this is just what I've heard, I'm just kind of, this is, nothing, this may be incorrect, but I think as a country, the government wants to be able to compete on a global scale with, cannabis and medicinal values of it. So they want a way to produce sensimilia, I think. And this is one of the possible solutions. I don't think it's a solution for a whole bunch of specific reasons. I think we can't risk losing a whole nation's landrace just to try to grow some sensi. I mean,
Well, to be clear,
the whole idea is these farmers can farm this plant on these desert hillsides without any water, without any infrastructure, no food. The plant will grow all by itself. And if they switch to a California variety, just so that it's sensimilia, all these farmers are now going to have to feed the crop, and they're going to have to put in irrigation. And I mean, it seems crazy, because then that's going to wipe out maybe what those farmers have, right? If they all of a sudden have to switch. I'd like to hear anyone else's thoughts on that.
Well, you're 100. If you had said this 20 years ago, you would have been a fucking prophet. This has happened. This has happened. There's no more landrace. Landrace is grown by very few people, and like you said, the skies is filled with pollen, so it's definitely been introgressed. There is, if I had to guess, I would say less than 0.5% of landrace being grown relative to, a 99.5% of hybrids. And then another thing is that the reef is not as dry as you might think that it is. It is dry in some parts, but it's relatively green. That's why they grow weed there. They wouldn't grow weed in the desert. There's places like Sinai and stuff are relatively unique for that. And then the other thing is that you're completely right. Since they switched to hybrids 20 years ago, there's in fact, I'm pretty sure it was Pierre, the guy that I want to get on the interview. He wants to. I think he wrote as either him or someone else wrote a paper on the increased water usage that was devastating the ecosystem since they switched to hybrids, because the hybrids were requiring orders of magnitude more water than the Beldia. So the Beldia the Beldia was, a complex of cultivars, right? So a landrace population on a large scale with lots of different accessions that were, regionally or localized to very specific microclimates. And by and large, it consumed a lot less water than any of the modern hybrids do. And so, you're completely right. Just a little bit late. It's already happened. It's unfortunate.
For sure.
But,
Yeah.
One of the reasons we haven't really gone to Morocco is because I've been speaking to Moroccans since we first started. I'm French, so I have a lot of Moroccan friends growing up and stuff. And my understanding is that it's well, and the days of the Moroccan landrace are over. It's not completely gone, right? So it's but it would still be considered extinct, right? Functionally extinct rather than completely extinct.
Yeah, I
So
think
there's still some.
Yeah,
Sorry?
far away, your little pockets out, maybe away from that pollen cloud. Maybe they've still got some hidden out in some farms far away.
Yeah.
I would imagine with a cloud of pollen that size consistently dropping, I would imagine that those landrace genetics are still floating around in there. It's just a matter of pulling them out and bringing them back. You know what I mean?
But is there enough there to repopulate the entire region and also wholesale, herbicide or annihilate the hybrid population that's there so that you could repopulate with quote unquote pure genetics? Is there enough diversity within the exigent population for it to even come back without having to reintroduce other genetics to get it to stabilize? I don't know. Well, these are things we don't know, and we probably won't ever.
Yeah.
It's just really unfortunate, but we got to observe. We got to observe it happening now so that we can see it coming in the future.
All right, so we're going to bring Saj from Kutama Select on. Hey, how you doing, Saj? How you doing?
Hi.
Welcome. So we're going to bring Kutama Select on.
Oh,
hey, how you doing, Saj? How you doing?
Sorry, I think I'm having this latency. Let me see what's going on here. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Yep.
I think I'm having
Yes, but you're right about latency.
Yes.
Let's see what's going on here. Can you guys hear me? Oh yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yep.
All right.
Yes, but you're right about latency.
So, how long have you been on listening to us, sir?
Oh, hello? I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Is
sir.
it better?
Much better.
It is. There's no echo now.
Yep.
Awesome. Hey, how you guys doing?
Great.
Welcome.
Good to see you, man. Good to see you.
Yeah.
Thanks for the invite.
Definitely. I mean, this is a real important subject to me because this is one of the strains I really want to start, working with. And then I know we as a team have a lot of questions, especially about the KIF and the Beldia and Morocco in general. So I kind of want Eloise to take the reins and start going on with some questions, because I think she has some really good questions for you. So let's get it going.
Hi, Liz.
Hey. I've always been super fascinated by Moroccan weed, so it's a real honor to have yourself on here to answer our questions and satisfy our curiosity. Thank you.
I'll do my best. I mean, yeah, for sure.
How long have you been in America for?
I was about 17 in the late 90s. I moved in the late 90s. I was born in Casablanca, and then my family's is from the Reef Mountains, kind of by Fez, not quite the Reef, but it extends over there. And yeah, I was about 17 when I moved directly to Long Beach.
Oh, wow. So are you part of one of the Amazigh groups?
Um, as far as my family background,
Yeah, I'm just curious. It's not important. I'm just curious. Yeah.
oh yeah, most Moroccans are Amazigh. That's really the truth. There has been a big uh campaign of Arabization of the population, but in truth is that the mother, the genetics is an Amazigh, and so even though there's some separations and some dividing within the people, some think of them as more pure Arab and some are more pure Amazigh, and then there's people who kind of fall in between,
Right.
that makes
Right. Right.
sense.
Yeah. Wait. So what is the keef? Is the keef originally from the Maghreb? Was it brought by the Arabs? What do you think?
I think it was pre-Arab conquest. It was pre-Arab because Morocco is an ancient Phoenician territory and Carthaginian territory. So, and then we know the Phoenicians have been traveling. They've been around. They're seafarers, and naturally, when as you know, with every seed, the seeds they kind of cross borders. They supersede the borders, right? They're handed to other people, and the other people take them other places. And I guess if we want to talk about nativity of the plant, I'm pretty sure it's somewhere. I'm not sure, but according to science, they're saying it's somewhere in Asia. But the, we have an old ancient spice trail that stretches from. It ends in Asia, in China or India, and ends. I guess it starts there or it ends there, and it starts and it ends in Marrakesh. You know, um, so that's kind of like the further west you can get through the spice trail using only landlocked places. Um, so, for instance, we have a lot of like plants that come from India. And matter of fact, we call it the Indian kanab, which is basically the word for rope, right? Like hemp or camp
Mm,
kanab.
mm, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Wow. Interesting. Yeah, I've heard a lot of different speculation about it, but I don't know. It'd
It's
be
to
it'd be
defeat.
really interesting if the Phoenicians brought it, because the Phoenicians, they brought grapes all over the Mediterraneans. So we know that they were intentionally moving plants around for the purpose of cultivating it. I'd love to see some evidence supporting that. That'd be really cool.
Yeah. Um, speakers. I'm gonna see if I can get you guys coming out of my other speaker so I can hear it a little better.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me well? Should I turn up my mic or that's good?
Oh, we can
It's
hear you
perfect.
real well.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so I was
Yeah.
always saying, I think it's linked to the Phoenicians for sure. So we're talking thousands of years. That's what it goes against what Western um, history says. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of narrative that it's came through the Arabs, and yes, the Arabs did use it and did introduce it into Europe um, through the age of basically the Moors in 700s and 1400s. That's it
Mm,
kind of crossed from the northern African to southern Europe, and then of course we
mm,
have the Eastern Europe varieties that came maybe directly through India and Eurasia. So there's some interesting dynamics. It'd be interesting to find that out, to be honest with you.
definitely. Yeah, definitely. So I have a question. What are like the consumption patterns like in Morocco? We were just talking before you arrived about how people smoke a lot of kif, just loose. and that the pressed resin was a somewhat newer phenomenon. And I just wanted to, because my perception is that it's maybe a socioeconomic thing as well, where smoking the unpressed resin is more likely if you are poorer and closer to the growing regions, basically. And smoking, commercial bricks is typically further away from the growing regions. And then once you get further away from the growing regions, the keef gets more expensive and the bricks get cheaper. So it's kind of like reverse. Is this accurate? Or maybe you could share like what do smokers smoke? What do they smoke? Yeah.
So it depends of your age group, really. Usually younger people tend to, I mean, there's definitely the prohibition has a lot to play with this. So as they were cracking down on Lebanon, Turkey, India, Afghanistan, I mean, the war on drugs, right? As they were cracking down on those countries and those territories, and then, also they were getting into massive wars with Russia and all that. So there was less and less product being grown out there, less hash being grown out there. So that put a lot of pressure on Morocco, especially the proximity to Europe, to start producing and stepping it up, step up, because Lebanon was taking a big chunk of it. The Red Lab was basically, I mean, I talked to this, I used to work in a restaurant and I worked with this chef. He's from Lebanon, and he was telling me how like they had an airport of like 747s just landing and going. So you can imagine, I mean, I've heard like even Red Lab was in Deadhead shows and, stuff like that, right? So it got around. I mean, they had logistics down, probably better than Morocco. But imagine when that got shut down, either through geopolitical wars in the area with, whatever tensions there are with their neighbor countries, and add the war on drug on top of that. So that put a lot of pressure on Morocco to step up and start producing a lot more. And naturally, it's a vicious cycle. So you want to produce more, you want to plant more, and then now you're looking for varieties and cultivars that produce more resins, and it's just a slippery slope, right? So
right.
back to your question. Sorry, I kind of got on the tangent a little, but back to your question, because it has to do with how we consume it, and like my grandparents, my ancestors pretty much smoked keef, straight up flour. You still find, like, that's kind of what I was going back to, the age group. When you're younger, you're smoking tobacco and hash. As you get older and your tolerance starts to get a little bit, you know what I mean? And you got kids, you got family, and you got work. You kind of find yourself going into keef, which is more gentle. You can get stuff done. You know what I mean? You can still operate, and so the older crowd tend to smoke more keef. And then the younger crowd tend to smoke more hash mixed with tobacco.
Got it.
No hash by itself. No.
Right. What was your first experience smoking hash as a Moroccan? Can you tell us about that? Is that okay?
Of course. My first experience was not smoking. It was eating majoun.
Ooh, yeah, okay. Interesting.
Can we take a step back just real quick? Can we define your definition of keef? What does that word mean to you?
So
wait, first before you answer, sorry, can we there's a couple different spellings. KIEF and KIF.
It really doesn't matter because it's all like, it's meant to be a Semitic word in its origin.
Yep.
So depending of what language you're speaking, you'll either do KEF, or if you're French, you'll go KIF because to them the I is E. So it really, but it's mostly KIF. And then in America, I've noticed is KEEF. Yeah.
Or KIEF. Very common that I see a lot.
That's more like Germanish. That's kind of like
German.
German.
Yeah.
Okay.
The I and the E.
I'm assuming right now. Yeah. Yeah. I've seen more often KIF because of French influence in Morocco. There's Kif, If. Like,
Okay.
And
So I
that-
didn't mean to
and that
get too
is-
far. I just wanted to clarify. But so Ryan's question was fantastic.
Yeah, is that
Yeah.
ground up flowers, or is that just dry sifted loose resin? Is it a mixture? What do we got?
so the word Kif, it's a weird word in itself because there's really no etymology. Like it's hard to find the origins of it. But the meaning is pretty clear. It's like every time they see a plant that like has the leaf like recognizable, it's a cannabis plant, it's called keef, right? Just the plant itself, like live plant in the ground growing like this, that they will say, hey, that's keef, right?
Okay.
So like I wasn't raised like that because we only had hash. Like I've never seen a cannabis plant in Casablanca. Like I eat majoon. I see, I smoke hash. Um, but in areas where it grew, even if you bring a plant from California and you grow it there, they'll call it keef. That's keef, right?
Okay.
Now the second meaning of keef is dried up flour. There's two other meanings. There's dried up flour that's already hashed, and the leftover is cleaned from the stems and the stalks and the sticks, and then
Okay.
chopped, or just like how the Jamaicans do it, and mixed with like heirloom tobacco, small little leaf tobacco. That's the second meaning of keef. The third meaning of keef is the same thing as I said, but it was hashed. It was literally flour that was
Okay.
not hashed. It's cleaned, of course, and seeds and
Okay. And so the elderly population tend to go towards the keef that's already been hashed because
Hello?
it's just. I think you're back.
Oh, sorry. I think I lost you guys for a bit. Okay, cool.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No. All good. I think we got most of it. But so the elderly population tend to go towards the already hashed keef, just because it's a little mellower, a little calmer, not so aggressive of a high. And then the younger you get, you kind of just get further into your freshness, wholeness, and concentration.
Yeah, and you got that. You still got that stamina, and you're young, and you can, But I do want to say, the plant, when it's cut for hash, when you make hash out of it, there's still a lot in it left for edibles. And that's kind of what I don't get here is like they want to use like the best of like like just like the strongest stuff. I mean, we're already going to sensitize it into something else, which makes it 10 times more potent. So I think they figured it out in Morocco where you don't really need that strong of cannabis. You can hash it and you can make edibles out of it.
So can we talk about the edibles, please? Because I think it's quite of an alien topic for most people. Personally, I'm familiar with majoon because all over South Asia, in Sri Lanka, in India, and in Bangladesh, they have majoon, and they have other similar preparations to majoon.
Oh, nice.
And so I'd love to hear about majoon. Pardon? Of course, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, many times. Yeah, I love majoon. So recently I tried one which I can't remember the exact name because it was a crazy name in Sinhala, but I tried a a preparation that contained like 19 different herbs and spices in Sri Lanka, including some crazy stuff like red ironwood flowers and stuff like that. All these herbs I've never heard of. And it was really, really good. And when I talked about it with all the Sri Lankan buddies, they were like, yes, that is what you need to fuck.
Right. Yeah.
You're going to get so laid. I'm like, all right. So, and I can corroborate that throughout the historical record. For a long time, cannabis has been associated with sensuality and with increased feeling in your skin. And that leads itself to sex. And so there's always been this relationship between cannabis and sex, particularly for women. And Majun has been the probably the flower's only been smoked for the last like 500 years, and not a lot of smoking was done by women. That's always been quite a masculine thing. But cannabis has been consumed as Majun and by other similar edibles for a long time by courtesans, prostitutes, all kind of women who sell sex for a living, but also by sort of more upper class women in Indian society. It's a really unique phenomenon. Majun kind of goes everywhere and everyone eats it. It's much more acceptable and sort of socially acceptable than smoking a hookah or something like that, or a sepsi. Anyway, I purposefully didn't really go into the details of the preparation because
no, that's
I'd
great
love to hear
You're
the
right. I
details
never really
of
thought
the
about it that
preparation.
way. Yeah, I never really thought about it that way. It's because it's like something you eat. It's not something you smoke. It's kind of like a lot more acceptable in a way because you're just eating it, right? It's like that makes sense.
So what's the prep? Because I didn't go into the details of the preparation in India because I don't want to muddy the waters. What is Majun in Morocco? How does one make Majun?
So Majun in Morocco, it's very secretive. There's like these gatekeepers. We call them ashaba. Basically, they're the herbalists. They're the people who understand plants and their dosage. And depending of which region or area you're getting it from, you will have let me say this. There's a base Majun. There's a base of it. The base is a few ingredients that everybody uses plus an extra group of plants that are indigenous to that area, plus the preparation of kief. So there's like three layers to it, right? And I don't remember, there was a culinary book that was released years ago, I think decades ago, about that had the recipe of Majun, and it was completely wrong. Like talking about like, I don't know, raisins and stuff. I forgot exactly, but it was shared by Madame Canoli, Madame, the Frenchie's wife, I guess, or partner, and it kind of made me think about it. I was like, wow, like it was so secret that like people really wanted to reveal what's in there, and it's really hard to reveal those ingredients. The easiest part is that the one.
Professional chef. I'm pretty sure it's in here. I'll find it.
It's an old book.
Wow.
I found. I was able to track the book, and I was like, oh, okay, that's why people, that's like the only reference people have for Majun, and I get it. Someone went to Morocco and talked to someone, but anyway, so the baseline is flour that's roasted in the oven with a lot of butter, almonds, nutmeg, butter, honey, and a little bit of fennel seeds. So this is the base. It's called sillu. The base is already a Moroccan kind of like, if you want to say, dessert or cookie that is made by itself. Yeah.
Interesting. That's news to me. Thank you. Does
Yeah,
it
so
go
it's
into
like
anything
you know,
else, or is it just one dessert?
that's the base number one, right? And then the
Oh,
two, the two is the native herbs of that guy that you buy. So it goes in different direction. Number two is a base that could be goes three ways. I hope I'm like not making it more confusing.
no, this is
Okay.
perfect.
So the base of it goes into three different directions. When you go to the herbalist and say, okay, I want to make Majoun, he say, okay, do you want to like laugh and like have a good time and be euphoric, or you want to have like your sexual organs are not like, you know, like back to what you were saying, like they're not like functioning properly and you need some kind of aphrodisiac, or you want the third one, or you want to like get like knocked out, you know, basically you need some deep rest, right? So depending, sometimes they'll ask you, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they'll just make you a little blend of their crazy herbs and give you this in proportions and say, here, you take this and you mix that to a ratio of X amount of silu, and then you add your cannabis, of course, decarbed. You know, you cook it in oil and you decarb it, and then you add. So then you have three layers. You have the silu, you have the herbs that the herbalist will give you, and then you have the keef that you will put in oil and mix it all together.
Okay.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So in West Bengal and also in other parts of India, Majoun can include Datura stramonium, can include opium, it can include bhang. It often includes raisins. It's almost
Not in Morocco. Yep.
It's almost a completely different thing.
Yeah, no figs, no dates, no raisins. I've seen some other, but see the layer two, the herbs, like you can find datura, you can find belladonna, you can find
in Morocco.
Weird,
Yeah.
you can find
Yeah.
like
Okay.
Spanish fly. You can
Right.
find kharkhasha, which is basically
Wait. So when you say you can find, I know those plants
or
grow in Morocco, but are you talking about the herbalist will give you datura for your majoun if you say so it's the same. Interesting. Wow.
yeah, it'll be like one seed per 5-gallon bucket of majoun that you're gonna end up
Right.
having 1,000 servings, right? It's like it's
Right.
really, you know,
It's diluted.
they got their ratios down, so they'll give you a big bag with one seed in it, right? You know, so and they're kind of like the gatekeepers in a way. They're like the shamans, making sure that those herbs are not abused and they're respected within ratios and proportions. And depending, of course, of what you need, because he's like the first degree doctor, depending what you need. But most of the majoun made in Morocco is for euphoria, is for laughing, it's for to have a good time. Most majoun. That's why we do it, because we're like, hey, I want, you know, let's laugh, right? So we'll eat majoun, drink some mint tea, and we'll just, you know, it's a group thing. We'll like hang out, tell jokes, and next thing we're like laughing, crying, you know, we're just laughing. There's no like crazy bad trip or paranoia. Sometimes it happened to me, of course, you know, after when you try to venture on your own and try to do a little too much, and you know, for sure. But it's what I'm saying is associated with well-being, with euphoria, with therapeutic effects, with aphrodisiac effects, with a sense of resting, deep resting. Those are the emotions that majoun is related.
That's very interesting.
Okay.
So I'm running on a few assumptions here. So just stop me in my tracks if I'm way off, but or if you don't know about what I'm talking about. But basically, in the Malay Muslim world, there's a concept called hayal, and hayal is a state of divine intoxication, which is very much valued by the Islamic community in that cultural context. So it's not seen as a negative thing or as like a social deviancy or even really as necessarily an intoxication in the sense that it's sort of prohibited by the Quran. Instead, there's a sort of a divine property attributed to cannabis, and thus a sort of an exemption on its use. Is there something like that in Morocco as well, in the religious social context?
Um, you mean like al-hal or hayal?
I've,
Hal?
I don't know because I don't speak Arabic, and I'm pretty sure the Malay word is
So
like they borrowed it from Arabic, but I don't know what the original word was. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right either. But it's Hayyal, Hayal.
Hayyal, hal,
Al.
al-hal. I think that's what you're referring
Right.
to. Yeah. Al-hal is like a state of mind. It really it could be associated to plants, but it's more rather a spiritual practice of being in the present in the moment. Of it's a trance. It's like a Sufi trance that could be attained by music, by chants, and sometimes, of course, cannabis could help, like get you into that feedback, right?
Yeah.
So I can see there are different brotherhoods who, I guess that's what they call them, that would use cannabis. Some would not. Some will use just music. Some will use but in Morocco, if I understand your question, is it like religiously tolerated? Is that the basis of the question?
No, I guess you already answered it. I wanted to know if this Malay concept had an equivalent, and it sounds like it does. I mean, you just described it pretty perfectly as far as I understood it. And then
Okay.
and then the broader question, yeah, was sort of because I know that like sometimes the Arabs can consider the Maghreb to be a little bit unorthodox in how it practices Islam,
Yes.
you know?
Not sometimes, all the time.
So I wanted to know if like there was this kind of like what is the not necessarily the role and the function, but a little bit of cannabis in this sort of religious context in Morocco, like how yeah.
That's an interesting angle. I think it's more cultural than it is religious. Um, I think if we get into a little bit of the history, is that um, Moroccans are Amazigh, and they were Christians, and they were Jews, and they were pagans, and they were different types of spiritualities that went through the Amazigh population. And then I guess the last one was Islam, that when Islam came, they found the people that already had a a structural culture that's already been established. You know um, it's not like they
Mm.
had to teach them everything from the bottom up. Like the Amazigh had agriculture, they had irrigation, they had plantation, they had rituals, and they had a lot of that stuff, right? So naturally, when Islam was imposed, I mean, some accepted it. There's different school of thoughts on that, like whether it was definitely resisted at first. It was like, try to resist the Islamization of Morocco. And then but when Moroccans, the Amazigh, took Islam, they've introduced their own spin on it. If you want, if I guess that's kind of joined
Mm.
what you were saying. It
Yeah.
puts a spin on it, meaning, for instance, I give you an example, that way we're not so abstract. So um in Morocco, you have Seyyid, meaning an old saint who was revered and respected in the community, who had spiritual powers. When they die, they'll put a little dome on him and paint it and keep the place clean, and people come and meditate and whatnot. In Islam, that's like a blasphemy. That's like a no, right? Like they will destroy those sites. Like so, so just right there, you could see how. And then there's also theology that was developed in Morocco that was kind of not in harmony with the theologies in the Middle East. So there was some kind of clashes for sure. And then you could say that the Islam that they intended Morocco to adopt didn't really translate 100%. It was infused with its African culture and Amazigh culture. And that leads us to
the reason I'm
Sufism.
asking is because you mentioned the weed potentially has been there since the Phoenicians, and so I'm asking, like, you know, if the Arabs didn't bring, because you know lots of Arabs smoke weed in, you know, Iraq and everywhere basically, but the Moroccans smoke so much more. in my
That's what I was
experience.
gonna say. Not as much as us, man.
And so I just want to know, like, what is it in your culture, in your religion? Like, what's up with the weed, guys?
Well, it's the original green triangle, man. It's the original. Okay, this is very interesting. I like where you're going because this ties up cannabis and resistance. Okay, this ties up two different things, right? Resistance of people, of a native people to their land, and cannabis had a lot to do with that. And I think we can see that those examples throughout the world, not just in Morocco. And so I believe that the Reef region had this ancient culture there, and it made it so it made it like its own identity. It's an identity. It's an identity of self-preservation. It's an identity of self-sufficiency. It's an identity of being able, because cannabis is a medium of exchange. It's a commodity, but it's also a powerful currency, because we had a currency. I mean, the Reef had a currency based on keef, right? So and independence. So if we talking about cannabis, we're talking about independence, we're talking about freedom, we're talking about free people, we're talking about sovereignty, we're talking about resistance to colonialism, we're talking about all these things. So maybe I hope that kind of answers your questions.
Absolutely.
And that's probably, yeah.
And it just reminded me of something. Before that, I just want to say something to the chat. I know you guys want to hear about, you know, terpenes and stuff more than politics and history sometimes, but it's really hard for me to talk about terpenes if I don't understand, like, where the fuck this thing comes from, you know? So I remember watching this documentary. No, it wasn't really a documentary. It was like a movie. It was a kind of artistic movie about, I think it was called Hashish, and I believe it was in the 80s. It's on YouTube for free. Old German thing. And there's a scene right at the beginning, the first scene, I think, with this guy, and he's just cruising around in the reef, in the mountains. It's very dry, and he's got this cooler thing on with him, and he's ringing a bell. And as he walks through the landscape, all these kids run up to him. And at first, I was like, "What the fuck are they doing? What's going on?" And well, he's selling ice cream, which, you know, we have that here too in Thailand. I mean, it's like an ice cream truck, but, you know, basically ice cream trucks take many forms. Sometimes they're just a guy with a bell walking around in different countries. Same in India and Thailand sometimes. But so the kids were coming up and they were exchanging keef. They were exchanging bundles of dried plants for, you know, 2-3 bars of ice cream. And then this guy would then take those bundles of keef back to the city and, you know, make some breaks. It was a really interesting documentary. They talked a lot about Moroccans involved in the industry traditionally, and then Moroccans involved in the industry as a way to make enough money to emigrate to Europe or to America, and the sort of the deep involvement of Moroccans with the international criminal, well, basically, yeah, the Moroccans are not, I wouldn't say running things necessarily, but they're very deeply involved in the transnational crime. And so there's just this intertwined story. Like you touched on resistance, you touched on keef as a currency. That was a really enlightening comment. And I'd really like to touch on keef as currency, first of all, the kids with the ice cream, and then later about Moroccans using cannabis as a way to better their lives and to sort of to resist whatever they're resisting.
True. Yeah. It's just an observation, I guess. It's not laid out as like that, when you read the Western books, because of imperialism and colonialism and all of that. But we always have to be taught something, because we were considered, if you want to talk about terpenes, we can, but we were always considered we should. Okay.
We will.
Yeah,
we got plenty
it's
of
not
time.
just
Keep
Morocco.
going.
The whole Africa was the heathens, and they needed religion, and they needed this, and they needed that, they needed civilization, and they needed. So there's always this scope. Like if you look at it from that lens, there's nothing that Africans can do that could, like, they even taken away the fact that pyramids were built by Africans, right? Like, there's nothing Africans can have, nothing. I'm talking as an African because Morocco is in Africa. And there's also that other problem of Moroccans thinking that they're French, they're Spanish, or they're from another country. I'm Moroccan, I'm American Moroccan, I'm both, I love California, I love America, and I'm really grateful for America and I'm grateful for Morocco. So that's kind of part of why I like to bring a slice of Morocco here to California. And when I'm in Morocco, I like to bring a slice of California there. And it's like always this, thing going on. But back to what you were saying is just that, yes, there is this colonial mentality of like, we've taught you this and we've taught you how to do this, and when you look at history, you find actually the contrary. You find that the Moors have brought books and have brought libraries and have brought architecture and have brought
Damn.
Hopefully it'll
about
connect back
cannabis.
soon. There we go.
Okay, sorry, did I cut off there
No,
somewhere?
Yeah, you were just getting riled up as well. It was great.
We lost all about 30 seconds.
So I was saying that, like, we're always looked at this in this colonialist Western lens, and then what I was saying is that, but when you look at history, it's quite the contrary. Is where the Moors have brought these things to Europe, brought cannabis to Europe. I'm pretty sure. Brought paper, silk, irrigation, agriculture, books, libraries, bathhouses. Electricity. So like not electricity, but like the first
Everything.
streets that were lit up was in southern Spain.
Yeah, kingdom.
Okay, before we go too deep on the, because we can get really we can talk a lot about colonialism. I'm not trying to minimize that conversation either, but just before we go, you mentioned keef as currency. Please tell us more about that. Like, what do you mean by keef as a currency? I mentioned the example with the kids and the ice cream and stuff. I would love to hear some more about that.
Hash coins.
Right.
coin?
It's a cryptocurrency, right?
Right,
The
right.
hash, you know? Yeah, it's crazy. You find these terms in like cryptography of hash and all that stuff. It's pretty cool. But
Wait, well, that was a Trailer Park
yes,
Boys reference, wasn't
Yes.
I'm sorry.
it? That was a reference to a really funny Canadian TV show. The character makes hash coins to pay for everything. It's really funny.
Oh, that's awesome.
I really
Sorry,
don't know much
continue.
about the currency part of it, but what I can say is that you know, I mean, I can take it from different perspective. Like we have like the book from Michael Pollan, right? The botany of desire, right? So it's a plant that really connects with people, and people want to take it. Like that guy give them the ice cream. He found value. There was a medium of exchange. He found value in what he got because he can go to the city and get maybe 2 times or 3 times more than what he paid for that ice cream, right? So because he knew someone down in the city has that desire to consume that plant for what it brings, it the therapeutic and the medical and the joy and peace of mind and whatever that plant has to offer to that person. So that's why I meant, because when the Spanish and the French were fighting for the Reef region per se, specifically that region, there was a fight. Like, and you can see it in history. You could see the French were more geared toward tobacco because they were here already in America, and they found tobacco. They had tobacco plantations and they had access to tobacco, but then the Spanish were more into cannabis. And so so the French had this tobacco influence and the Spanish has a cannabis influence, and the riffians were in the middle of it, trying to be like, hey, we just want our independence, we don't care about you or you, we just want to, like, we've lived here for thousands of years, we're free people, we have this plant, and that's our kind of currency, and we gonna the only thing we can back up our currency with, our notes, is with keef, because that's what we have to offer to the world. And it's kind of like you'll find some of these paper bills with like the reef and like some kind of symbology on it and stuff like that. So it's pretty
Wow.
interesting.
First I've ever heard about this, man. This is fascinating stuff. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Makes a lot of sense. I was thinking, I was like, there's a lot of gold in Morocco, but I guess it's not in the reef, is it? It's pretty far away. They were mining a lot of lead and tin in the reef, weren't they? Like, I think my understanding was
No, the only gold we
and...
have is black gold.
Right.
Only gold we have is
okay.
is ash, and then
I have
we have silver in the south.
Right. I have another question. Could you please tell us about sepsi? I think most people have never even heard of the word and would be very interested to hear everything that you know about sepsi.
Oh, I love sepsis. Sepsis are great, ancient, medicine tools, just like how the chalice in Jamaica and in India and the chillums and all these are like some of the very first medical medicinal tools that people had. And sepsi is so basically sepsi is made out of wood, hardwood. Sometimes
We lost you.
Losing
we
audio.
can't hear you anymore. Since you knocked your mic, we can't hear you anymore. Okay, you're back.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So sepsi is made from hardwood. Some woods are a lot more favorable than others because they tend to cool down the smoke. And then sometimes there will be 2 pieces sepsi or 3 pieces sepsi. A little clay chillum, a clay little ball in the end of it. and it's just a nice experience because it's long so, and then the quality of certain woods like apricot wood tends to cool down the smoke. The chillum in the end, sorry, the bowl, the clay bowl in the end is really like it's got this almost like steaming properties instead of like burning properties, because it stays warm. And then yeah, it's like the in certain regions in the north you find them, they sell them on the counter at the convenience store some places, it's just pretty cool. Sipsies
Yeah.
are great. It's a good way to smoke. Yeah.
Is it
Nice.
my understanding that Sebsies are more of a kind of like a disposable way to smoke, as in like you don't continuously want to use the same clay bowl forever. You're not trying to clean it continuously and reuse it. They're kind of somewhat. They make a lot. There's a common way to change them out.
Yes
Or
and
is it
no.
more?
Depends how serious of a smoker you are. Like the serious smokers, they'll tie it up to the end. They don't want to lose it, because that's the worst thing that can happen to you is lose the ball, right? You can't smoke.
For sure. Yeah,
So we even have jokes about that, or but yeah, they are made of they're made of clay, red clay. And so the serious smoker, before he does anything, he gets that little head and then puts it in with sugar, and kind of like puts it in the heat and kind of fires it up so it's a lot more durable. And then until it gets a bit
Interesting.
darker, and then they clean it up, and then now they have their little clay bowl that they could be using a lot more, because sometimes you'll like force it in and and it breaks, and you're like, oh shit, I got two more, and I'm it's kind of like rolling papers, like I got one left. So the more experienced smoker will fire it up as they get it, and with the, I don't know why they put sugar and heat, and then they'll just start a fire and throw it in there and let it just burn up for a half hour, and then they clean it up, and now they start to use it.
It probably
Okay.
starts because I'm just assumption, but just gets liquid. You get that liquid caramelization, and then you get like a carbonization. So you fill all the porosity of the clay, so you get like a glazed seasoning type thing. And once you fire
It's
it
a
far
Yeah,
enough,
it's a natural glaze. That's right.
yeah,
Yeah, I like. Thank you for. Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
just conjecture,
Um,
but sounds like it's right to me.
the chat
So
was
Sepsi
asking how
goes.
to.
Yeah, sorry.
So how do you spell sepsi?
Again, it's a Semitic word. So Seb, Sebsi, is kind of like a French way to say it. Seb. There's a I think there's people named Seb, and then SIC, or like C in Spanish, Sepsi. And yeah, you can. It's a great way to consume keef. Again, so here's back to what we were talking about. When I moved to California, they were talking about keef, 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 and I'm like, okay, what is keef? So, but keef in Morocco is different. It's not the same keef, and I always leave comments sometimes on certain people's posts on Instagram talking about this etymology of keef. And like I mentioned at the beginning, and you asked the question, keef is just you know um, flour that's chopped and has nothing to do with resin, like here, like how it's referred to in California.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think those definitions are really, really important. They all mean something, and we shouldn't just slap a term onto something to try and create a new culture out of something that's existed for a very long time.
Yeah, I would agree.
I think
Language
you're.
is pretty fluid, like you
It is. Yeah.
I get into arguments regular. I don't know. I don't know. You can't stop people from doing what they want with words.
Nope.
They're always just going to do what they want. Like Keith
Right.
was one thing. You know what? That actually brings us. That's a really good segue to another topic because oh shit, I need to be really careful how I say this because I don't know if I'm smart enough to. There has been a shift in cultivation and in genetics in Morocco over the course of the last 20 years. Now, my understanding is Beldia is a word which refers to kind of heirloom crops or landrace crops more broadly, and that there would have been sort of localities, maybe specific villages, that would have been, the name of which would have been used to describe specific varieties of keef, right? So I don't know, what you maybe say like, the keef from Ketama, right? Something like that, as a description for what we today would call like a landrace strain kind of thing. And that in the 90s, there was the introduction of something which they call kardala, right? And I think that's the word. I might have it wrong. Okay?
Khardala. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'd really like
Yep.
you to tell us about that, but I just want to situate what I'm talking about. It's that in terms of language changing and evolving, Beldia is now being used to refer to the landrace, and the critical is a word that's being used to refer to hybrids a lot of the time. And there's just been this huge shift, not just in the cultivation and in the genetics. We also briefly talked about the explosion in the usage of water, but also in the language that's used around the culture too. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So about the Beldia and Khardala and like sorry, you cut off just a little bit, and I just want to make sure I understand your question right.
Yes, about the Kardala, and I think also the Freaky Nugs is asking if we can talk about Banyo and Nafda, and just the sort of the evolution in the words that are being used to describe the culture and the things
I
within
like
it. Because
that.
people,
I like that.
people are lost.
That's awesome.
People are lost. Yeah.
Yeah. So some of these words like banyo and nafda and tabesla, they're all refer to the vessel that you use to catch the pollen with, right? So they'll use ceramic, and tabesla is from the word tapsil, which means plate. It's a plate that's made of ceramic, right? Baño is a Spanish word. It means is a plastic tub. So you'll see
Basin.
sometimes in a video, a basin, exactly, yeah. You'll see in some videos they'll just use a cheap plastic one. I don't even think they're APA or free or whatever, but they'll just use what they have, right? That's baño, right? I would like tabisla. Personally, I want ceramic. I want nafda in Arabic. It just means to nafda means like to
drum?
sift, It's like
Okay.
yeah, it's like you sift something out of something. Yeah. So it's nafda means sifting, banyo means the catchment vessel, and then you have different vessels that we use like tabesla, which is a ceramic kind of bowl.
So okay, I think we're getting, at least the point I'm trying to make is getting a little bit lost here. So a landrace is not just the genetics, it's the culture around it. So when I was trying to talk about the words to describe the genetics changing, but this is also great. The words describe the vessels to catch like people are now using terms like dry sift, English words. They're using words like ice for a long time. There's all this stuff about the polarization of
Bubble
trichomes
bags.
and everything. Exactly. So like, even if the genetics were still the same, would it still be the Landrace, when the culture has changed so much, when the words that are used to describe all these things are just no longer in usage, and the objects, the tools as well, are changing so much as well. There's a big difference between a ceramic vessel and a fucking shitty plastic bowl. Can you tell us what Kardala it means, and what it is and what it represents?
Sure. I think what you're referring to here is the terroir, in from the big perspective, because Beldia it's not a cultivar, it's not like a strain like we use the words, or it's definitely a chemovar, right? It's definitely a wide variety of different traits that express themselves depending. They will turn on and off. Those traits will go on and off depending of where you grow them. So if you grow them closer to the coast, the Beldia is so diverse in a way that it's gonna express itself differently than in Ketama, than in southern Ketama, than on the west side. So one thing I grew up hearing a lot is that, for instance, we have the qsriya. Qsriya is like a red, and then the hash is red, right? And then you have the ktamiya is kind of like honey brown, hazelnut. And then you have the taunet. The taunet is southern of Katama. It's blonde, it's beautiful, it looks like gold. And what I got to, after doing some research and after talking to a few people, what I realized is that that color hash reflects the soil. In Qsariya has red, deep, iron-rich soils, so therefore that resin comes out red, and so on and so on and so on. And like in Katama, it's deep in the alpines, so they have a lot of this, humus, brown, soils from all the conifers. And then when you go down south, you get into Taunet, which gets into like the desert area of Morocco, more drier because you're a little lower. Then the earth reflects that. It's kind of like more whiter. I wouldn't say white, but much more lighter in color. Much, and then so the way the Beldia expresses itself in that terroir comes out really light blonde. But it's the same group of plants. It's the same pool of genetics, because as you know, in Morocco, we don't grow from clone, we grow from seed. And that diversity in seed is really important, is kind of what it's kind of like a cog, and kind of like how a watch works, is all these different little bigger ones, smaller ones, and they each contribute. So if you isolate one out of the group, you will not get the full picture of what Moroccan hash is. You will get just a slice of the picture, and this is kind of what
we lost you again. You touched your mic and we lost you again.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
I'm back. Yeah,
I can hear you now.
Man, I think something is wrong with my cables. So, yeah, I'll make sure I don't do that.
Dude, this is so interesting. You're I don't know how many hours you've got, but I have so many questions. Can I tell you a little bit about red soils? Because I think the chat wants to know about this a little bit too. I want to go back to the Kardala, and Freaky Nugs also mentioned the Romia genetics. And I really do want to go back to this I know you were probably quite young when this happened, but I'm sure you heard some stories. But first, let's talk about red hash and blonde hash and everything else, because that is fascinating. So I've recently been doing research into Kirivong, but first I smoked blonde Lebanese and red Lebanese. and I was a sommelier for a long time. So I was lucky enough to go visit Lebanon to try wine. And the wine region is the same as the hash region. And I noticed that it's a long valley, the Bekaa Valley. And as you go up it, because it's not exactly north to south, but it's roughly, it gains in altitude, and the soils go from, very light, sandy, blonde soils to a darker red soil the further up the valley. Here's where it gets even more interesting. They harvest the plants lower down first, and the plants at higher elevation after, which leads to increased CBN development in the plant, which also contributes to a red hue. And I think that answers the question from Potoneto, which is that it does have different effects. My experience is that the red hash is far higher and I don't know because I've never had a chance to really analyze this, but I would assume that if CBN is the molecule that's responsible for the more sleepy effects, the sedating effects, then that's what you get from the red hash, is that you get this much more sedating effect. But that's when it's taken longer, not necessarily on account of it being red itself. And so in Kirivong in Cambodia, it's the same thing. It's a very small mountain, actually. The whole area is, you could fit 20 Kirivongs into just Ketama. It's a very small area. The whole mountain is maybe 3 to 5 kilometers wide. And the soils are, it's a very interesting geologically very interesting region. They mine a lot of gems and stuff there. There are some patches of soil, which I can't remember the name in Cambodian, but you also find them in West Bengal. In Bengali, they call it Kiri soil. And Kiri soil is known to produce plants that are somewhat smaller in size, less vigorous, but with this red kind of hue. And in the sort of the colonial times in India, this red ganja was supposed to be the best. And in Cambodia, the red ganja is also considered to be the best. In Lebanon, the red hash is supposed to be the best. Now we're talking about red hash in Morocco.
You opened up a whole rabbit hole there.
Yeah, well, you opened up the rabbit hole. Thank you for that. Yeah.
True.
So please tell us about, because I was fascinated to hear. I mean, you already explained it a little bit, but I would like to hear about how, not necessarily the cultivation side of it, though I would like to hear that too, but how do stoners perceive it? Is there a grading system? I think a lot of us already know about the double zeros and all that kind of stuff, and I'm sure we would love to hear about the king selling hash abroad and stuff like that. But I want to know right now, what do Moroccans perceive as the quality scale? Is red better? Is blonde better? Taunat, Ketama? Does it depend on the farmer?
Right.
Yeah. What's the hierarchy?
There are definitely certain valleys that are produced better. So that's just talking to the farmers and the people who will go and source. When I lived in Morocco, because I left when I was 17, then I came back when I was like 30, and I lived for about 7 years there, and I got to really immerse myself back again, and then back to California. So just from talking to people about it and seeing a lot of it, and seeing the progression of it, of the hash changing, going from Beldia to Romia, if we want to use those terms. We basically so there are valleys that are known to be tucked away from dirt roads. As you know, here, when you have a dirt road on your grow and cars are driving back and forth, you get a lot of this dust, and resin is sticky, and it likes to stick to things, and so you'll get a lot of that clay, silt kind of in the air. And so if you're growing next to roads, you'll get a lesser quality, versus if you're like deep down and you gotta drive, and then you probably gotta like get on a donkey for a half an hour to get to some like deep within the valleys. It protects the pollen from neighboring farms from cross-pollination, especially people who are growing, hybrids and stuff. And B, just a lot more clean, a lot more pristine, less dirt roads, less cars driving by, less civilization, uh, purer water coming from the source. Because I'm kind of going back to le terroir. Le terroir, is everything. Even in wine, that like your soil composition, how much silt, how much clay, how much loam. You get pockets, and then your exposure, your how you're facing, because most of the time is facing kind of like south, like west south. There's like and it's kind of like a bowl, and it's just like hitting it. The sun is just, the intensity of the sun is really, really hardcore, and there's a lot of artesian wells coming from the top, and so there's a lot of this mineralized water that is rich, that basically is used to water these plants. And as you know, the plants that get the most water on the top, they tend to finish a little later, and the plants that are more on the foothills, they get they get water trickle to them, even though now they have more irrigation and stuff. But this is back kind of like when they were trying to grow according to the terroir and to how the availability of water and irrigation. Now irrigation is a big topic in Moroccan farms. Like everybody's irrigating, these overhead irrigations everywhere, and even during, like, the head irrigations. And I mean, because it's you got mountain, you got acres to irrigate, and it's kind of tricky. Now they're doing, some got more money, they'll do like drip system and stuff. But my point is that things are changing for sure. So it depends what era we're talking about. Back in the days, things were different. And they were trying to kind of like be in harmony with nature, use the water, use the wells that they have, use the slopes, the terrains, use the seed stock they have. Like, they were just a lot more. Now they're getting very very resourceful. Like, they're trying to import new genetics. They're doing drip, they're doing hoop houses to like start seeds. They got more, they got more power. Back in the day, there's areas where you had no power, and as we all know, hash is best sifted in the cold climate. So they'll harvest it in July, August, but then they cure it all the way till December, and they only start sifting when it gets cold and dry.
That's
So
cool.
so I don't know if I kind of went off topics there, but
It's so, man, I think we've all been doing that, and it's perfect. It's maybe we need to get you on again, because there's just so many subjects that were very briefly covered that I think we can spend so much more
Sure.
time on.
Right. I mean,
I have a
we
ton-
haven't even covered the plant itself,
Yeah.
the morphology, the smells, the terpene profile. We haven't even covered any of that. We're just going into Morocco and the culture, because it is such an important part of it, Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, no, I was just going to add to what you were saying, is that I think the reason for that is because, one, the Beldia is largely replaced by hybrids. So what is there to say about the terpenes and the morphology? We can certainly go into a little bit about its columnar architecture and how it gets typically planted in very high density plantings, and it just grows straight up with no side branching. But there's just not a whole lot to say on the topic. And as far as the terpene goes, like, Beldia has not been systematically studied in any way, shape, or form. Like, no one knows anything about it on that level. Like, no one's ever gone and studied different expressions of Beldia from different regions in Morocco and analyze them in a lab to say, this is the terpenes representative of Chefchaouen. These are the no one's ever done that. So I don't want to. I mean, if you do have anything that you could say about it, I would love to hear it. But I hate to disappoint the audience like that. But I just don't know how much there is to say about
No, I
you
do.
know, Turk.
I do have something about
Okay.
that.
Okay, well, please
Oh no,
tell
for
us.
sure.
Because I think it's
There's
what
definitely
everyone wants to hear more
monoterp.
than anything else.
There's definitely some, monoterpene and sesquiterpenes, and there's a lot of different types of. It's like actually, there's even some certain terpenes are like hard to detect with instrument, but the nose can kind of pick up on that. But the majority of it is there's a lot of beta pinene, and you pick a lot, like that's what we refer to as woody,
Mm.
kind of like that incensey vibe, the pine, not terpenylene, but there's that too. So this it's interesting. I can refer to whoever's listening who wants to check it out. Go to Ace Seeds, the company of South Spain. They have acquired some Beldia seeds from some old time farmers, and basically their job was to cross pollinate and increase the population. And then they did some tests on some COAs on it, and you can kind of go in there and you'll find, if you go to Beldia, their page, and you scroll down, you'll find the COA and what terpenes they find. But what's interesting is that, as I was saying earlier, what makes this thing special is that it's everything coming together. Is
Yeah,
what's more harder to describe than to isolate one plant here and one plant here, and they all have a
exactly.
piece of the puzzle, right?
Yeah.
They all have a piece
So
of the
far,
puzzle, but when they come together, yeah.
yeah. You've been painting a beautiful picture for us so far, and like I can't
Yeah.
smell those. When you say beta pinene to me, I think some things, but you getting passionate about sepses, I can practically smell the hash. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Ah,
because one, I think smell is very subjective, and two, I think that when it comes to like experiencing things across a screen, across something like that, like when you talk at length, passionately about any of the subjects, whether it's the water pipes or the terroir, as I'm listening, there's a picture that starts to form in my head, and I'm not saying that I can really literally smell anything, but it's probably closer to what than sort of any COA. And then the other thing as well is that I do think that there
ah,
was so much diversity in the terroir that even if there are some accessions that have been studied, I don't know how representative that is of the whole region. They don't have to be, of course. Some data is better than no data, but I'm always hesitant. People are always like, "Oh, what is like Parvati Valley, the terpenes there?" And it's like, dude, there's millions of plants. Like, I can't sit there and be like, "I've smelled all of them. This is what they smell like."
right.
Like, that's crazy talk. Like, yeah.
It's almost like we as a
Um,
group are trying to fixate certain aromas and profile characteristics to a specific area, and and that group only comes from this specific area, and so that's how it's that area, when in reality there's a huge diversity even within these smaller regions.
yeah, I think so. I think at least
Yeah,
I think there was. Sorry.
and what makes Beldia so special is that um it's so full spectrum versus what we have here with hybrids and polyhybrids. You'll find CBD, you'll find CBG, CBNs, a lot of CBN. Matter of fact, you mentioned the red correlation between CBN and even after that, they take it and they sun dry it, so that increases the CBN as well. So they do find a lot of CBN in there, and then tons of terpenes, and CBDV, THCV. There's traces of that, and it's just the perfect ratio. And it seems like the Bildia always maintains that ratio between its population. It will have phenols that will have a little bit more of that, and then phenols, And then one thing I've because I'm very also curious about the terpene profile of the Beldia. Um, I, um, I I I I actually was surprised to find out that it has a lot of limonene and beta pinene, and I think most cannabis has a lot of myrcene, and then the most cannabis also has a lot of beta carotene. So these are like pretty much, but then their ratios is what creates that bouquet, that smell, and it really doesn't mean anything on its own. This information is kind of like a
Yeah.
little bit irrelevant, but at the
Maybe
same
we could
time,
ground it somewhere. Maybe you
please.
could ground it somewhere for us. So when I think of beta pinene, I mean, this is obviously really dumb. I think of pine trees, and you mentioned that there were some of the terroir in the reef were surrounded by pine,
Cedars. Yeah,
cedars,
Yeah.
cedars.
cedars.
They, I,
The
I was gonna
Atlas
say
And you
cedars.
beta
said
beta
you
pinene is more of a
mentioned
cedar kind of smell than a pine smell, correct?
I think so. Yes, I am not.
again, it's okay, the science of smell is a bit complicated, but you already said it. It's about proportions and ratios. I think beta pinene is a component in both of the aromas of pine and cedar. Fuck, I love the smell of cedar.
But you're
Cedar is that smell.
totally. It's a lot more in cedar, that woody cedar. But see, cedar has it's woody, it's incensey, but it has this kind of honeyish citrus mint to after finish to it.
You're naming all the Moroccan ingredients: honey,
Yeah,
mint, cedar.
it's funny.
Right.
So, Saj, it's funny because even the Gary Crushers that I'm growing right now, right? I can tell that there's a specific like group. Like I was telling you the other night, there's a specific group of flavonoids and terpenes and everything that I can tell are pretty consistent in your growing style. And it seems like that would be a consistency that I would see in the Moroccan culture almost, because in the different types of hash, the different types of hashes that I've gotten, that have been from the area, there's that smell. There's that specific that, and it's that Beatty caryophyllene smell, that cedar, that real woody kind of earthy smell. It's consistent across the board in any hash that comes from the Moroccan area.
It's my experience with it too. Well, I don't know
And
actually,
I
because
think
I don't know if I've
even
really got that much experience. Because the brown hash and the blonde hash, different terpene profiles or similar? What do you think?
uh they're slightly different. I think the blondish is more minty, is more on the
Okay.
mint side. The brownish is more on the cedar pine. They all have that honey to them for sure. But yeah, the blondish is a lot more minty, I would say.
What does the Moroccan stoner prefer? I know it's hard to say, but
As far as like what type of hash, yeah,
yeah.
you know, we it's hard. Like I like it all. As long as I feel good and it's therapeutic and medicinal and positive. This is the one I wanted to say is why Moroccan hash is so popular. I think is because of its um if it's that happy edge that it brings. It's not that paranoia-ish type of, it's really euphoric, cerebral, and happy, and you're having a good time. You're not like, hearing noises and you're like, what was that? Like maybe if you smoke a lot, but but overall it's got that really positive cerebral like vibe that's coming from the earth and going through you, and it's kind of connecting you to the ether, and it's like looping back and forth. I don't know if that makes sense to our listeners, but it's very holistic. It's got that vibe to it. And what I think everybody prefers different things depending of what they can get their hands on, because logistically it's kind of hard moving hash around in Morocco, because it is legal in the Reef Mountains, but it's not legal in other places. So there's all these like genius creative ways to move it. And so a lot of times you're at the mercy of your connect and your guy who you source from. And in Casablanca we have a couple guys who are really famous, who always have the best, and who always carry the Beldia, and they don't mess with like other things. And if they do, they'll let you know. And if they don't let you know, you will find out. If you know your stuff
Okay,
well.
I need that connect, man.
Right? You talk after the
Yeah.
after the live, right? Ryan had a great question. So Ryan's question, is there any difference in the dry cure storage of the flour or the hash after it's made?
So naturally, it's kind of like a very dry, kind of like how it is here in California. The mountains are really dry. Versus Santa Cruz, for instance. Santa Cruz is really wet and humid, foggy, and then versus more like the Sierras and stuff is kind of dry. You feel it, right? And it's cold. And those are perfect conditions for hash, right? Dry and cold, because
Yep.
the opposite is your enemy, right? Humidity and heat breaks down. The heat breaks down, changes the composition of cannabis. So there's some like practices that I've never seen personally, but I've heard of like burying it in clay. Clay has some really good properties. Morocco uses a lot of cellophane to preserve resin, and they make sure they keep it away from humidity and keep it away from heat. So and then stability also, like keeping a constant temperature and humidity is really important. And somewhere down underground, there's some depths where you can start to find that consistency of temperature. And yeah,
Kind of like a
but
wine
drying
cellar.
and curing, yeah, kind of like that. But the drying and curing is really interesting because, as I was saying, the Beldia is starts to flower early in May, June, and it's for being a narrow leaf, it has nothing that we know of a narrow leaf. Like, it doesn't have those exotic kind of like terpenes and terpenolines, and uh, uh, so it's kind of a weird narrow leaf cultivar where it does finish really early. People think of it as an auto, but it's really not. Some refer to it as a semi-auto, but it's really not. It's just in tune with its environment. Really, that's really the best way I can say it.
So rather
So
than like an auto, it'd be more like a self-triggering. When it's ready to go, it's gonna be ready to go, kind of thing.
yeah, it has that in its genetic code. It just knows it's been there for many, many, many centuries, and it's just like reinforcing that every generation you're getting seeds, you're reinforcing that. So naturally it knows winters come quicker. The water supply is gonna be more abundant higher than lower. So there's all these like things are coded in it that makes it, versus us here in California, we bring everything from all over the world, and we're trying to force a genetic from somewhere into our climate, right? It's kind of like the opposite. So back to the drying and curing, because it finishes early, it's still hot, July-ish, kind of like August when they harvest. So because it's still hot and it's still kind of summer, they will bundle them up, right? They will like make this big. It's not like how we just hang one by one and give them airflow and stuff like. No, they will just bundle them up and put them in these buildings that are like adobe buildings. Like most of that, they're like thicker walls made of clay, so they kind of keep that. That's a natural curing jar, if you want to say. If it's too wet, it gets rid of the excess moisture. If it's too hot, it cools it down, and vice versa. So those adobe buildings are really nice. Matter of fact, one day I would love to have one for storing your hash and cannabis and stuff. But and then like I was saying earlier, referred to, I noticed talking to people, and when I always trying to acquire hash in the summer, it wasn't as good of a quality. It's just because it's too hot to sift, and then the sifts kind of get clogged, and they get heat with the friction, they get hot, and the weather is hot, so it kind of starts to stick, and it doesn't sift well, right? But before that, so they bunch them up. Before that, they dry them in rooftops for like 2 days in the sun, and they flip them every like 2-3 hours, 4 hours, so it doesn't like get this direct sun. It is direct sun, but they just keep flipping them for a couple days. And because the cultivar, the Beldia, is really fluffy and it's not as dense, it tends to crisp up a little quicker. And then now they bunch them into this big bunch, so they can kind of like keep the plant stays kind of like moist, and as a big bunch. And then they put them in buildings, and then they will wait till it gets a bit cooler and drier, and then the right time comes, and then they start to sift more in colder climates.
No special magic techniques or anything like that.
Really high grade stuff. Sifters use 3 screens of the same microns. And then if you see them just use one, it's usually so there's levels to it. Like sometimes they'll try to show you something, and they're like, okay, here it is, it's good. And then and you're trying to get something for your personal, and then when you pay them, they bring you something completely different. That happens, not every time, but it could happen. You have to be careful with that. And I think classic. Even in India, when I was in Nepal and India, I had some of that happen to me, right? So you gotta be on your game and be like, wait, the stuff I saw, like always keep a piece of it. So if we get into like a confrontation, I'd be like, okay, well, here it is. This is what you brought me, and here it is. Comes together. This is not coming together, so it's not the same, right? Yeah. So yeah, and then so the more serious people use more sifts. They use more screens. They use a couple screens at least. Just the one kind of holds the biomass, the plant matter on top. The second one acts like a filter, and then the third one lets all the good heads kind of fall into the catchment.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So is there any regions that are today more well known for growing Beldia as opposed to Romia?
It's really like, I think it's a shit show right now. Sorry, my language. With just all the hybrids and everything. I think the deeper the region, the harder to get to, the more likely you're gonna experience some Beldia. And then the closer you are to roads, to bigger cities, even though there are people out there, of course. So your question is two facets. There is a a couple decades ago or a decade ago, they were trying to figure out how they can be more profitable and meet their bottom line. So are they going to plant more, or are they going to plant cultivars with more resin density in it? And this is kind of where Hardala stepped into the scene. That's when like Pakistani came into the scene. This is when like all of these different. This when Critical came into the scene. They were like, wait, from a hectare, I usually used to get 600 to 800 grams of top first sift. Now I'm getting 3 times. So it's just like it's a no-brainer as far as like economics goes. And so they were incentivized to maximize their footprint and to utilize their footprint so they can make more, harvest more resin, right? That was how it was. Now that Beldia is getting more popular and getting more in demand, it's falling into a category of like desirability and scarcity. So there's not much of it left, but then there's demand. The demand is going higher, so therefore the price follows. So therefore now there's an incentive to hopefully get back to these Beldia, not because of we're trying to preserve anything.
Well, I'd like to hope there was maybe at least one or two people trying to preserve, but I completely understand what you're saying. Yeah,
there are.
That's really good. That's really good news. That's really good news. I'm happy to hear that there's a resurgence of interest. I know that some of I haven't spent much time in France, but I spent a little bit of time there during COVID, and my neighbor was an older Moroccan guy, and he was my hash.
Which part of France?
Pau.
Oh, Pau, yeah, next to the Pyrenees.
Yeah, right next to the Spanish border.
Yeah.
And that's a little bit of a long story, but yeah, it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. And yeah, so I got some contacts for some hash in Spain, and so I was doing some trips to Lerida to pick up, and I was able to source some what they called Beldia, and they were all older guys. And it was like I was very lucky to get this contact because it wasn't like they were only selling to other older guys, basically.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
In Europe, I will only smoke flower when I'm in Europe.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Oh man, you don't need
to trust the hash. Yeah, because it's so easy to mix and so easy to put things into it.
Mm-hmm.
Flower, I can see it. I know if it's indoor, if it's hydro, if it's. I tend to go towards like the outdoor in Spain. I'm like, hey, if you got, I can see it. It's leafy. It's nice. I'm like, I'll smoke that over any hash because I've heard so many bad stories of people like cutting hash with stuff that I was just like, I'm not gonna risk it. Unless if you have a good connect, unless if you know somebody. In most cases, I will be traveling.
I think even if you have a good connect, there's just it's endemic. The adulteration of, I think this is an issue that's actually really not ever, very rarely talked about, is just how common the adulteration of cannabis products is. It's one of the, I think, stronger arguments towards regularizing the trade for the safety of the consumer, because they're putting nasty stuff in. Could you maybe? So what? Before, I'd like to know a little bit about the different grades of hash. I know we kind of touched on it a little bit before, but before we launch into that, I'd like to clarify. Like, Beldia is also somehow a grade of its own in the sense that I've never seen someone attach other names to Beldia, like Palm or fucking King Hassan or whatever. It's always just Beldia. Maybe the name of the place where it comes from, right? And so all these
Yeah.
other names that you hear, right? Your 00s, etc. Is
Right.
that all associated with the hybrids and the introduction of the hybrids?
No, it's mostly associated with the technique.
No, I
Like
get
the
that. I
best.
understand that.
Yeah.
But were those names and techniques also used to differentiate Beldia products? Because I've only ever seen those techniques used to differentiate hybrid products, in my experience.
No, they were there prior to the invasion of hybrids and
Ugh,
polyhybrids in Morocco.
right.
Yeah, 00 was the mesh that it was the type of screens they've used, I think, back in the day. That had the double
Same with
zero
the
on it.
flower.
Yeah, exactly. Like force. And the baseline, like I said, is the plate ceramic. Zatla is I made a little funny post about it on Instagram that like Moroccans called it za before it was a thing, and because it's called Zatla in mostly in Tunisia they call it Zatla a lot. Then you have a lot of names. You have like Ghilghula, meaning like it's bubbles, right? It's kind of like we call bubble here. Ghalghoula, you have Hia in France. A lot of the Moroccan descent, born in France, Moroccan, Algerian, they will call it Hia back in the days, I guess, in 2000, meaning like the good one, the good. And then you have a lot of names, but it has nothing to do with the cultivar. It has nothing to do with cultivar. Because back in the day, they had Beldia and then they had Khardala, and then slowly they got the Paki came in the scene and critical. But then the tech
Fuck. This was what I
Oh,
was
that would
waiting
happen.
for. I was waiting for this more than
that like
anything else.
There he is.
Oh,
Hold
we
on.
lost you there,
oh
man.
sorry
You're
oh
at
yeah
the Packy and the
I was
critical.
just saying this is like I was waiting for this more than anything else. You were just addressing the Kardala arriving and
yeah what I was saying is that the techniques didn't change, but then the strains, like the cultivars, we always just had Beldia, and then we had Khardala coming into the scene, we had Paki come into the scene, we have critical come into the scene, but the outcome, the hash that came out of all of those always was referred to either one of those names, either Zala or 00, or it didn't matter what the cultivar was. That makes sense.
okay, understood. Yeah, thank you. That's really interesting.
Now you'll hear like
So
critical, you'll hear like strain. Nowadays you start to hear strains like critical or
I was gonna say even online, like when you watch some of the videos, the other videos on YouTube and stuff like that, they'll talk about critical and the Zala,
Zatla.
and the Beldia, Zatla. Yeah,
Mhm,
those three are the ones I see talked about the most common.
mhm.
if somebody wanted to go to Morocco and smoke some Beldia, how do we do it? What's the best way to do this? Is there a place we need to go to? I mean, because obviously, like if you're a tourist, you can't just rock up, expect good contacts in a big city. You're gonna get hardcore scammed, I would imagine. So I would
Totally.
imagine you got to go to the reef, right?
Oh yeah, no questions asked. Just go straight to the reef where the
And
reefer
what
grows.
post up in Chefchaouen, rent a dirt bike, fucking cruise around.
Start there. Start in Chefchaouen
Yeah,
is a good place. It's a vibey place. You got the river, Everybody's cool, everybody's chill, it's blue, it's nice, it's cool, it's not that expensive. And start your way in with, yeah, I'm not trying to encourage anybody to do anything here, but but yeah,
I'm
Chef
trying to
Charlie is a
encourage
good
people
spot.
to.
Hey,
But how do you
traveling is
how do
always
you
fun.
yeah how do you move around? How do you move around? Do you rent a car, or do you hope you find some friends who can take you some places? Like, because my big thing is that, like, I found that if you really want to get stuck in with the real deal, even in a place like Chefchaouen, like, I'll give you an example from my world. Like, so you could go to India, you could take a 15-hour bus into the mountains, and then you could walk another 10 hours, and you would be like 1 kilometer from the fields, and no one wants to take you there, you know.
That's great.
But then you go 500 meters further to like the edge of the field, and you see someone working in the fields, and they're like, ah, come, come, come. You
Oh,
know,
that's cool.
the people, there's always like an incentive for people away from the fields, whether it's 500 meters or in the next village in the next city, to make some money from you by taking you into their world rather than showing you the totality of what exists in a given area. And very often people want to like attach themselves to you because they know that they can get some money from you, so that like, but that's a problem because now you're bringing someone along with you to meet all these dealers, to meet all these farmers, and that, that affects the way that the farmers perceive you, etc. So for someone
True.
who wants to really get stuck in there, I would imagine you have to have your own wheels. Like, is that accurate? You just rent a car or a bike and.
So I've been to India, and India is like 100 times worse than Morocco. Like, so if you
Oh,
made
okay.
it in India, you're completely okay. Like Morocco is gonna be like a breeze,
A
because
walk
now you have
really?
these, like, you know what I mean? Like, now you're developed these kind of reflexes to deal with those people who are coming at you from everywhere and try to like wheel you in without you. Like, they're really smart. They'll wheel you in, and next thing you're like doing what they're asking you to do, and you're like, wait,
Yeah,
what?
exactly. And you're like,
You
bro,
know?
like I only have 2 weeks here. Like,
I got no time to waste. Exactly.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Morocco is a breeze compared to India, so it's good that you have that Indian background. Um, Once you're, so there's this thing, like, there's a competition between Chefchaouen and Ketama. Like, Chefchaouen is a lot more accessible. It's lower altitude, and they're really proud about cannabis, and they will take you. They will tell you, hey, you want to see some fields, we'll take you. You want to have the experience, we'll take you to the river. You can sit down, we'll cook food for you. You can even go on hike for 4 days with like food, keef, water, whatever you need, you're taken care of. So they do have that, which I enjoyed when I was there. I enjoyed like just sitting and watching a wild cannabis plant growing on the side, and growing in the sand, growing, like that. And it feels good to see the plant free, and it feels good to meet people who are already on that same level as you. They're not like, um that's their daily life, that's what they do all day, and they want to share, they're eager to share that with you. Everywhere you go, there's good and bad people. It's up to, as a traveler, you start to pick up on these cues and know. No, some are more cunning than others, but then you trust your gut, you'll know.
Mhm.
And what I love about the reef, there's a lot of honor and sincerity, and honor in what they do, and pride. There's a lot of pride, and they don't want to come off as the ones you see who are always try to wheeling, and they're not even from there. Most of them, they kind of went to the city, lived the
The
life, and they
same in
come back.
India.
You know what I'm saying?
You drive all the way to Milana, you spend fucking thousands of dollars getting there, and then some fucking guy from Punjab scamming you, and you're like, bro.
You're like,
Like,
no, you again. And look, you're walking
yeah.
like a day later, and you turn, and he's there. He is again, waiting for you, and you're like,
Yeah,
"Oh my
seriously,
god,
seriously,
don't you want to
seriously,
disappear, bro?"
seriously. Seriously. Okay, so the people that are because you already mentioned it a couple times. The people growing Beldia, they're going to be further away from the roads. They're going to be further away from the sort of those, I guess, zones of commercial activity and further away into the countryside. When you actually get there, like if you did get there, how friendly are the people? I understand that there's this culture of really deep hospitality in Morocco, but can a random stoner expect to just turn up at a farm in the rural reef and smoke a bunch of hash, drink some mint tea, and hang out with the boys?
Totally. I think it's all about social codes and being aware of um of the culture and of what are the things to do, what are the things to not do. Just a brief example. I don't know if things changed. I left Morocco in 2017. It's been almost 10 years since I have been back. But um, just an example, like in India, they love photography, they love pictures. As soon as you whip your camera, they're like right there posing, And in Morocco, they don't like that, So you have to kind of pick up on those cues. And like if you're out there with your cameras and you just like taking pictures of people, you might have a problem. People come to you and say, hey bro, like why are you taking my picture? Even though if they're in a private, they don't understand the private and public, even if they're in a public space. There's that. There's social cues. So you do want to uh be aware of those social cues. And
Always.
other than that, most people, Morocco has a big hospitality culture. It's within us. Matter of fact, that was kind of like a culture shock when I first moved here. And I'll go to someone's house and they don't even offer you something to drink, like just not that you need it.
Where's my tea? Motherfucker,
Huh?
where's my tea? I'm
Right,
just
it's like
joking.
tea,
Where's
water, even yeah. So but then yeah, there's social cues. People kind of like, you just kind of gotta get in there and not try to impose yourself too much, and just kind of feel the vibe and see how they run things. And then slowly you're like getting more comfortable. And then there's also this trust thing that they're like, people from the mountains are, they're the same everywhere you go. That's my take on it. Mountain people are mountain people, you know um
They're a little bit aloof, right?
you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Mm.
Mountain people are mountain people. And then there's like a cultural layer, and then there's a religious layer, and then there is a microcultural layer of that area. But other than hospitality, of course, that's all you're gonna see. People will open up your doors and say you can sleep here. You can. They'll
Right.
make you breakfast. They'll show you around. They'll really take care of you.
I guess
They're really good
that's what
people.
I was hoping for, was the micro layer of like local. Because for example, in Parvati, like Rasol, Milana, super unfriendly, not welcoming.
Really.
You can't touch. Yeah, you can't touch the plants. Can't even really stay in the village. And then 2 valleys over in Grahan, completely different story. And so I don't know if that's not the case, or if you don't know, that's okay. But I was hoping to hear like, yeah, you need to go to these places, because those are the places where people are like proud of growing Beldia and they're open or something like that. But I don't know, maybe if that culture is I think it probably exists. It just hasn't been necessarily documented. But if it hasn't, and you're describing this resurgence of interest and a bigger market for Beldia, then I'd really like to see some specific terroir emerge as, sort of hotspots for the cultivation of Beldia. And I'd be shocked if people didn't want to go and do tourism there, because like, what's the point in going to the reef and smoking fucking critical? Like, just like, yeah, of course I don't want to buy any ass hash off the streets in Po or something like that. But to be honest, you can get like, plates from named farms of static dry sift and stuff imported pretty much anywhere in Europe these days for pretty reasonable prices. And so I don't know, other than, of course, appreciating the architecture and the culture, I don't really see the point in a stoner's trip to Chefchaouen if it's not for the Beldia. For me, it's
You touched on a
literally
good point
only the
there.
Beldia.
When I was living there, I was frustrated why the higher quality goes out of the country. It does not stay here. And I've always voiced that to people that were either, on the other end of it. And the answer I always get is like, well, they're willing to pay more for it. And, why should I keep it here if they're willing to pay more for it? And we're already struggling. Like, okay, you want because, okay, I was going to say that earlier and I kind of probably skipped. The way, to answer your question, the way we tell quality is through sifts. First sift is always the top quality, but it's barely hit. Like when you see them on those videos hitting like that, that's the commercial sift. The first sift is basically you just throw your stuff, you go 1, 2, 3. Imagine doing that for a couple hectares. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, you're just moving mass amounts of biomass gently on the sifts, and you're probably going just like that or hitting it gently. And then you go through that first, the whole thing. If you have 2 warehouses full of stuff, you go through all of that, right? And what you get is the first sift. That one is usually reserved to the elite, reserved to lawyers, people who have connections, and people who pay in advance. People sometimes, back when I was, maybe things change now, but when I was there, people will pay in advance. They say, here, I want my X amount, and it's like a year in advance. Like when you get the next harvest, you put aside my whatever you get from 1 hectare to me. They can't put a defined gram on it because you never know that year. That year might be a little more, a little less, but you run a hectare, you do the first sift, my first sift. It's kind of like here how rosin is. Now they'll talk about the first press versus second press versus third press. And it's back to that. It's like in rosin, it's like first press, second press, third press, and the fourth is probably used for edibles, and it's the same thing. The first one is used for higher grade. The second one becomes what they call the 00, is the commercial good one. And then the third one is like the budget one. Someone would just want to he doesn't have a lot of money and just want to, get by the day. And then the third and fourth one sometimes are mixed together. And then the people who kind of adulterate, they'll use that to add some nasty stuff to it and make it better in terms of quantity and high, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Very, very interesting. It's the same in in India. It's the same in wine and stuff too. The first press is the most valuable, and the first rubbing in. And also, so one thing that I was thinking about was that when it comes to, because you mentioned the variability, right? You can't put a gram amount on it. And a lot of that has to do with the weather, which not only affects the gram amount, but the quality. And so in more mature economies, there is a whole system where we track the weather in the growing region at a really micro level, such that we can start to build models of the weather over longer periods of time. Again, specific to very local areas, in order to give buyers more confidence to make the purchases, because the purchases by default are taking place years ahead of time. In the wine market, it's called
the wine market. Okay.
So in the wine market, it's called the en primeur market, and like the primer market. And yeah. Like for example, in Bordeaux, like the wine is sold like 10 years in advance. And so the investors who speculate on these purchases, because there's so much money to be made, have a lot to gain or a lot to lose from predicting the weather. And so this increased water usage from the critical strains from the Carrera, and the climate change, and just weather changing in general, is going to have some really interesting effects over the years in terms of the quality of the crop in the reef, and the quantity of the crop. And I really look forward to seeing more localized weather data, so that I can know like what were the great vintages of the reef, because hash ages quite well. And you were talking about the differences between summer hash and winter hash. I would imagine there's pretty big differences between the first NAFTA on one year as opposed to on another year. And I would pay a lot of money to try that and
Right.
compare.
Wouldn't you?
Right.
It's true. Yeah, no, it's so true. It used to be where the hash you were getting on the market was at least 1 year old in Morocco.
Oh yeah, really?
Yeah. Because by the time they harvest, they cure, they sift, and they package logistically, they get it out. Because they
Right.
remember, they get trapped over there. It's like 10,000 feet. There's no roads. Imagine you get snowed in. Like, how are you going to get that out? Right. So by the time it clears and it melts, and then people start to say, hey, what about last year's harvest? Oh, matter of fact, it's perfect. It's ready for you. By the time they come get it, March, April, things move slow in Morocco. If they tell you 3, it's really 5. If they tell you 6, it's really 7. But I do want to say, all of this is from experience. I'm not trying to speak for any Moroccan or put a brush stroke on how, make it like a stereotypical thing. Everybody obviously is going to have a different experience. That's just my experience. And, as I was saying,
you're all good. I think we all know that, and we're all here to hear your perspective.
Yeah, definitely.
Just want to make sure, because there's gonna be people on the other end being like, "Well, that's not how it goes in my town."
Yeah, of course, but you know what? Let them come. That's just gonna mean more engagement in the comments if that ever happens.
Perfect.
That's
perfect.
But that's true though. I think that's also comes back a little bit to the coming and visiting these areas, and the touts and the intermediaries, is that, but also the farmers themselves, is that, you kind of have to, for me, I compartmentalize everyone to a very high degree, because everyone needs to believe that their hash is the best, and that you agree that their hash is the best.
Right.
Because if they're not invested, and if they hear that you're going from, one village to the next, they're going to talk mad shit about the other village and be like, place is dog shit. They don't have any fucking good weed, like.
Right. Honestly, I did not mingle too much. I did not mingle too much on that end. I was very, I was kind of in Casablanca, and even when I went up to the mountains, and I get my personal, I never drive with it. I always make sure it's delivered where I go. And just, I don't want to deal with it. And they've been doing it a lot longer. They know exactly how to do it, but it's just all personal. And someone once told me, he's like, if you can have an amount on you, then you're good. Because the last thing they think about searching is you. I like that. You see what I'm saying?
That's awesome. Yeah.
Meaning, like, even if you're carrying however much you're carrying, that's your personal. That's how much you can carry is your personal. But if you're like, now you're shoving your car with stuff, that's a whole different story. So just have it on you, and now it's legal anyway, when legal. But I'm talking back in the days where things were still gray, yet it's kind of weird because you're in that province and it's legal. It's everywhere. And then as soon as you kind of step on this line, now it's no longer legal. So there's this like schizophrenic laws that we had to deal with.
I like how you put that. Kind of like the laws we have here now. Like they're kind of all over the place right now.
So you briefly mentioned about how the best hash goes to lawyers and doctors and stuff, and it's interesting because you're the second Moroccan to not only mention that but to say almost exactly in those words. And so now I'm wondering, is there something in your culture that, like, are lawyers and doctors hash connoisseurs in Moroccan culture?
They are,
Like,
like Peter
okay,
Tosh said, even the
okay,
lawyers too.
okay.
um,
So who's
yeah,
is there a certain place or like, like who are the biggest hash nerds in Morocco? Because like the farmers typically they only know about their own farm and they talk so much shit about the other village that they never have that top-down perspective. But
right.
like, for example, in India, occasionally you'll meet like rich guys from Delhi who've been to like every fucking village and they've bought
Right.
kilos from and then they can tell you a lot about the whole thing because they've seen it on that level. Like, is there if you want to learn about, I mean, I guess we've got you on the podcast, but like if you wanted to go to Morocco and sort of immerse yourself in connoisseur culture and smoke the very best hash, have you got any tips for that?
Honestly, what I would do is I will just go and work. I will just start in shift shadowing and be on that status of like, hey, I'm here to work. I'm here to help. How can I help? And I think they will bring their guard down much more, like, because it's kind of like psychological. Like everybody has to kind of they have to have context on you. They don't know who's who. Are you an undercover? Are you a buyer? Are you a small buyer, a big buyer? Are you a worker? Are you a smoker? What are you? They're just trying to figure you out so they can better deal with you, right?
The most
So
annoying person, a very small buyer who wants the best quality.
that's me.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, yeah, my girlfriend at the time will always tell me, man, like when we go travel there, you're like, I gotta say, let's leave off 3 days for you to figure it out, to meet the right people and find the right thing, and then the vacation starts, right? So yeah, I will spend a lot of time following the rabbit hole. I'll be like, all right, what you got? Okay, let's
Ooh.
go see it. No, 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 that's not what I want. That's not, and you'll be surprised. I turn down more than what I accept in Morocco, and I get frustrated. I'm like, no, what is the first sift? Where is it? Why are you guys keeping it away from us? Like, I want to buy it, like, well, like you said, but you're a little guy who wants the best. Like, we're, it's already reserved for. Sometimes I had friends in Europe who will get better quality or high quality. It's of course for much more. It will be more expensive, but it will reach. It will get to there, and then in Morocco will, they'll serve the second, the third, and the fourth.
Mm.
And just also because of there's only a little bit of it. Imagine sifting a hectare.
Right. I guess I was
Yeah.
thinking more like, I don't know, and this is a very kind of Orientalist kind of thing, so forgive me, but like, I don't know, some like little cafe in Tangier where like, the stoner club gets together, like, because again, you're talking about like lawyers, doctors, and stuff. I imagine those people don't live in the reef, in the farms, or anywhere near them, right? And so, if the very best first hash, if the first beating, the very best hash it goes abroad for like, all the fresh rosin and stuff. All that stuff goes abroad, and then the lawyers and all that. What are they? Are they smoking Beldia or are they smoking, critical and modern stuff? Like,
I think their prime concern is that they're getting an adulterated product, right? That they're,
okay.
you know what I mean? That they're not getting, because it's hard to tell once it's in powder, right? What's in resin glands. I think that's the main. The second one, there's definitely people who take it further and say, I want Beldia because Beldia is much more full spectrum. It's got a balanced ratio of secondary metabolites and cannabinoids, and it's off the land as well. And then there's maybe a third group of people who just wanna have that l'exclusivité, like we say in French, you know. They want to feel important because they are important. That's all they do. They not talking bad down on them, but you know, they make reservations before they go to a restaurant. They don't just walk in. They got people driving them, you know.
That's funny.
Uh,
I never thought about that.
VIP.
Yeah, but people who make reservations at restaurants is totally a stereotype of people, isn't it?
Hey, I like to
It
make
definitely
reservations.
is.
Sure, if I have a very important thing, you know, like they'll treat you different when you make a reservation. They expect you,
Yep.
you know.
So what's the can you describe your experience smoking the best hash in Morocco that you ever smoked? Like, can you set the scene a little bit for us and tell us what it was like?
Yeah, the best hash was it's really an experience. It's like it captures, it's like a snapshot. It captures that moment that you're experiencing that smoke. It's how can I say? It's kind of like it's like looking at a picture that is 4D, 3D versus just a 1D picture, right? And it's got a lot of facets to it. And the first thing I can tell you, it's very medicinal. It's very okay. Really good hash is almost like coffee. It really gets you focused, hyper focused. You're not kind of like sluggish or tired. All of those are signs of bad quality hash, according to Moroccan standards. Is that when you smoke the real stuff, you're alert, you're aware, you're focused, you're in the moment, you're in the now, you feel good. Everything about your body is just a whole sensory of things. Like everything comes together, and you're hyper focused, I would say. That's kind of like, you can do something and it's all up here. It's not so much in the body, it's all up here, and it's clear. It's clarity. It's super clear. There's no like weird signals of like you feeling, I don't know, paranoid or fear or I guess also there's settings. Setting is important. Who you smoke with, who you hang out with is very important. Who you do it with, and I think Morocco emphasizes a lot on setting. You have your minty, it's elevating. Menthol is elevating. Sugar, so there's lots of sugar in the mint tea, so it's kind of keep you from getting cotton mouth. It's hydrating you at the same time, and it's almost psychedelic a little bit. It's very psychedelic, and like anything, sometimes I'll get close. Like, so when I'm like selecting, or when I'm smoking all the different cultivars here in California, I have a point of reference. Is always that Moroccan hash, and if it's something that's kind of like gives me that vibe, I naturally go, lean towards that, and I want that in my library. I want that cultivar. I want it to stick around. I don't care about how it looks. I don't care about, because, so it's very special. Definitely very special smoke. It's unique, special, and full spectrum. And later I realized why, because it basically has everything. It has most of the cannabinoids are in there, a lot of CBD in there, a lot of CBN, a lot of limonene, which is also very important for enhanced mood and alleviating, mood and anxiety. And I recently found out too that Moroccan Beldia is very high in antioxidants as well, uh, which is interesting.
Interesting. Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. So much. We've covered so much ground today.
All right. Yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
Right.
my head is almost spinning with so much information that you've shared and provided us today. Yeah.
No, I'm gonna have to go back and watch again.
We'll have to go to Morocco and smoke some hash.
You know it.
For sure,
Yeah.
I did. I have land in Chefcha in the mountains up there, and part of the vision is to convert that into a angite, like some kind of
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
yeah, with a recording studio for musicians and for kind of tourism to kind of take them up there and experience it. And
No.
that's a long vision kind of goal. It's not immediate, but I think now I was part of this colloque that they did in Tangier about keef and hemp and this is pre-legalization in Morocco. And I went there to just kind of like hear what the locals are saying and how they want the laws to reflect how they want the laws to be crafted. And there's like a recurring theme that kept coming back is that most riffian people wanted to legalize cannabis only there. They did not want the government to allow a different county, for instance. It's like here in California, they say you can only grow it in Humboldt, Triangle, Green Dot. That's it. We don't want Santa Cruz. We don't want Santa Barbara. We don't want LA. We don't want San Diego. We don't want none of that. Like the only way you're gonna legalize it if we get a a head start, and not only a head start, just limited to these regions because Beldia only grows to these regions well, and they would not. And it's true when you look at if you take Beldia and you grow it on sea level, it completely starts to do some wacky weird stuff. You know, it'll flower and then it'll veg and it'll flower and it just doesn't. It's confused. It doesn't have those terroir that it's so that was really interesting to see them fight so much. And I was kind of like curious. I was like, why will they emphasize so much on this? And looking at here California, look at it legalization, look at what Santa Barbara did, look at what big players coming in and basically having no cap and basically just smashing the culture first before the industry, just smashing all these small little farmers, smashing. And after that I was like, oh, I see now what you guys are saying. I get it now. I understand now. I'm not saying it's right.
It's complicated.
They're
Very complicated.
they're doing what they thought they needed to do to protect the culture that they've got so far.
I
think so.
Those kind of policies and movements are literally called protectionist.
Yeah.
The whole concept, I was gonna say something about tariffs, but I'm not gonna twist the knife any further. No, this is how the appellation system was born out of for wine in France. Was riots by working class people in the wine industry who refused to accept the globalization of wine, and so they forced the French government to put in place measures that would prevent Spanish farmers, Greek farmers from undercutting them in their local markets, French wine consumption, by creating a strict system of import and export and a strict system of delineating these zones of production and what grape varieties can be grown in each one, such that no one else can sort of take other people can make as much wine as they want, but they can't take bread out of your mouth by sort of affiliating their
Right.
product with yours.
Right.
It's all
You
about
You can't
cannot
call it
label.
Riesling. You can't call it
Yeah.
Champagne. You can't call it Riesling. You can't call it these
Yep.
appellations. And that's
Mm-hmm.
brilliant in a way,
Yeah.
It's brilliant, but
It
it's
really
also
is.
it's very conservative. It's very conservative. It's a protectionist thing that sort of goes against the sort of the movement of people, of genetics, and everything else. And also, it restricts expression to a certain degree. So I think it's necessary for the early development of an industry. Excuse me, sorry, I need to.
Okay.
But that as the sort of the market matures, it limits certain producers. So within sort of like if someone were to define Chefchaouen hash or something as a specific type, right? For example, let's say we did associate the blonde formally with the more sandy areas, the more desert areas of Morocco, such that somebody in another area who produces a blonde hash then wouldn't be able to necessarily associate it with that product. I mean, it benefits the farmers, clearly. But say you are a farmer in that area that produces blonde hash, right? And you are in a specific microclimate that produces a hash that is not blonde. Fuck you do then? And what if you just sort of want to do things differently,
Right.
What if you don't want to do dry sit? What if you want to do charas? Once we implement these strict rules for production and delineating the zones of production, of course, it might be necessary to help the industry survive and the farmers survive. But we have to also understand that it's a double-edged sword. It's a massive imposition on everything, and it's when I call it conservative. What I mean by that is that it forces a snapshot of what it is. And in the best examples, it's a democratic organization that sort of decides what are the norms within our region. Like, do we allow dry sift versus this? Like, does it count as Chefchaouen if it's blonde or if it's red? But most of the time, what ends up happening, almost especially if it's democratic, is that larger corporations then start to dominate these interest groups and force their way. Right. So, for example, French cheese is super famous, right? And I think a lot of people would be shocked to find out that some of the most, like, for example, Camembert, there's only like three traditional producers. There's like three. There's one called Salé, which most people probably don't know. There was one last traditional. So Salé is the name of the breed of Landrace cow and the name of the cheese. And it's all corporations producing it, except one lady she's the only one who still uses the Landrace cow that's actually associated. But because she's the only one in the appellation, she has absolutely no voting power. And they keep making rules. They literally forced her out. The last person to make authentic, they forced her out. And what they said? They said her product was too variable and too funky. They were like, because you're still using the Landrace cow and because you're still using traditional methods and crafts, your product isn't consistent and standardized enough to represent the product. And so it drags down the reputation of the appellation as a whole. Thus, we don't want you in it. So appellations are a really, really dangerous thing, but they're also a really powerful thing for benefiting the farmers. We just have to be really, because we talked a little bit about adopting the best practices of the wine industry for developing, places like the Reef, places like Parvati and stuff. I think that's a great thing, but we need to really understand what that is. It means a lot more than. Yeah. It means a lot more than just sort of protecting our traditional products. It means handing over all the power into defining what our traditional products are to a pretty small group of people. And we might want to believe that they have the best intentions. But that's that how important, So I think that I really want to see zones of production emerge in the Reef. I would really like to see more international recognition for the terroir of Ketama, of Chefchaouen, etc.
100%.
I'm just really hoping that it happens in such a way that the diversity and the quality of the traditional products is made to shine rather than creating yet another vehicle for local power brokers to dominate and extract profit from the local economy.
Yeah, I mean, history proves that farmers always get the shitty end of the stick, if you want to say it, right? They always get the leftovers, yet they're the ones who do the hardest work, right? They're the ones who are preserving, they're the ones who are growing, cultivating, sifting. Even at times, they were the ones who were taking the most risks. Not only from a perspective of environment and weather, but also pests can come and ravage your crop, and then you got thieves, you're taking most of the and in business and capitalism, the more risk you take, risk to reward, it applies everywhere in capitalism except when it comes to the farmer. As soon as we get, you know what I'm saying, it's super weird. And that's with coffee, that's with cacao, that's with bananas, that's with every commodity, everything that was a culture and became a commodity. And I'm not saying that we should be super conservative or we should be democratic about it. I'm saying I think there needs to be a balance and checks and balances of where these farmers always have a say and have some leverage that they could use to make the best decisions based from self-preservation as well. It's kind of what I was saying, as cannabis is a symbol of self-preservation, resistance, and self-sufficiency and all these things. So when the system gets in it, it basically dismantles. I mean, we could see it here in the Green Triangle, right? There was a lot of self-sufficiency, there was a lot of sovereignty, there was a lot of people basically surviving off this crop for many, many years. And then all of a sudden we legalize, which is great. I'm so happy. I'm like, don't get me wrong, it's like the best thing that could happen. I don't want to see people go to jail. To me, that's the most important thing than anything. Like, nobody should be in jail for a plant, and that's great. But naturally, like you were saying, capitalism is gonna, not that it's a bad thing, but the greedy part, the extremes are gonna be trying to play. Like, super conservatives are trying to pull, and then the super capitalistic are trying to, they're just both are gonna trying to pull from their end. And guess who's standing in the middle? Is the farmer.
So I think that's why it's up to us as a community, and I think this is why it's so important that you're here sharing your experience and your knowledge with your natal landrace and the culture surrounding it. Because as you described, the resurgence in demand for Beldia and the increase in production to match that, if the market just wants mass-produced crap, then that is absolutely, the farmers will be pulled in that direction to the detriment of everybody. And so it's really important to us that, as consumers, that we stand up for quality and that we, refuse to accept the trash, and I don't know. I think that Morocco has just so much depth and history and diversity of experiences to offer with its traditional land races and the people, the landscapes, and the cultures around it, that I'd really like to see more appreciation of that in the community, such that the forces of capitalism, have some positive effects on the cultivation of Beldia and such in Morocco. Like for example, your gîte, like if you were to sort of like, I mean, it probably already exists, but like right now, for example, I was asking you, I was like, where do I go?
Right.
Like, I would pay so much money to just post up and have a sort of curated experience where I don't need to get scammed for 3 days before I find a good, I just rock
Exactly.
right up. Someone's done all the reconnaissance, and I can just, go experience and I really don't think that I'm alone in that, but we just
Right.
don't talk about it enough,
Right.
and so the forces that don't recognize this market, this potential. But
And
I
thanks for
really
saying
think that
that, by the way. Thanks for voicing that. The way you just did was beautiful, was perfect. This recognition, this uh, you know, rebirth of Morocco, because and it's mainly due, I think, not to cut you off, sorry, but it's mainly due to the popularity of extracts in America and in California, especially with rosin and the movement of fresh frozen, and Spain had a lot to do with it. And all of a sudden, Morocco has entered the chat room now, because before it wasn't there. Before, all the focus was on flour, was on beautiful crystally buds, dense, the OGs, the Bubas, whatever, right? The headbands, the sour. The focus was there, and then we went to cookies, and we went to gelatos, and then now all of a sudden we're going full circle, and we're back to extracts. And I've always said this, like, I predict or I forecast that the market is moving there. It's only gonna move there. 90% of outdoor is gonna be mainly for extracts. And then guess what, when you don't have cultivars that extract well, Morocco shines. Now people are paying attention. Now they're like, okay, well, not just Morocco, I'm sure, India, but India's always been on the spotlight. Like, even when we hear Frenchie, bless his soul, when we hear Frenchie talk a lot about hash, there's always this reference to Nepal and India and that area, and not so much about Morocco, even though I'm sure Frenchie started his journey with Moroccan hash, because France is like 90% of hash that was in France was possibly from Morocco. I'm sure because of proximity, it was really close. Now and like I said, I appreciate you saying that, making that emphasis that there needs to be a little bit more talk and appreciation and about Beldia, about Morocco, and about what Morocco has contributed to this community and the culture throughout the ages, and since the hippie movement, since the 60s. So it's really important, I think, that this work needs to be done, and people um need to know about it, and maybe it's the extract way, that's why we're here. Maybe that's why Morocco has entered the chat, is because of now there's all this focus, hyper focus. Now we see Moroccan peaches. We started to see, Purple City Genetics doing a whole line with the Moroccan, which is great. It's putting it out there. We see in Humble Seed Company went up and put a little highlight in there. I run into Ben the other day, and I was like, hey man, thanks for, that was the first thing I said. I was like, yeah, thanks for doing that. Put in a little spotlight. Even yeah, put in a little spotlight there, and maybe we'll, we got some things to uncover and to learn. Maybe they have a lot more to share with us, those guys up there in the mountains.
I think they do, but it's going to be a little bit of a journey. So, for example, with Charas and Parvati, and it has less to do with the fact that it's hand rubbed than where it's grown, and that's why it also applies to the reef. A lot of it just wouldn't pass modern phytosanitary standards, and it would take absolutely massive investment to modernize the facilities. But then you have to ask, like, well, why? Like if it okay, adulteration, absolutely, we should do something about that. But
But
you know, there's this
skin, dead
focus on
skin,
purity.
okay.
I honestly don't think that's actually an issue because of the way
Right.
that it's done, and also the fact that maybe the first hand would contain more skin, but no farmer is like going out there with like flaky hands and being like, all right,
Yeah,
let's go
right.
start.
It's all
You know, like, but then, you know, after a few days, the terpenes have literally, your hands are pink because you've so little skin left on them.
Wow.
So I think after the first few hands, you know, you got no skin left to contribute. So the first few hands, definitely, even if your hands aren't flaky, there's going to be some dissolved skin in there. But I don't think that it's even that. I think it's more like, for example, being grown next to conifers that release pollen, and the fact that it's a sticky plant, being grown next to dust clouds, massive erosion of the topsoil due to irrigation, which then means a need to overfeed and add lots of pesticides and herbicides, and then due to the poverty of the farmers and etc., they're using lower quality inputs that then raise the toxicity of the soil, you know, heavy metals, all that kind of stuff. It stays in there for decades, and the weed is not fit for consumption. And then this is more of an Indian problem. I don't know how, but if you really are in the middle of fucking nowhere on a farm, these days you probably have some plastics and stuff, some consumables that you need to dispose of. And so in India, they just burn it, and they burn it in piles, either outside the villages or outside the houses. And there's a certain degree of that smoke that is going to waft up towards, you know, the fields and the plants and end up there. Even if basically what I'm saying is that even if the pollution is not that high in the mountain areas, there's still a degree of pollution. So there's a lot of different vectors in which the traditional products just aren't ever gonna be able to compete. If the criteria is going to be cleanliness, then something grown in a sort of a hoop house, sort of like outdoors on flat land, is always going to be more cost efficient, and no investor is ever going to like. And so I think that we might see the total extinction of traditional products as we move forward, because you're right about moving towards extract, and you're right that the majority of young stoners aren't discovering weed via chillums and steamrollers and stuff like we did. They're discovering it via vape pens that have zero connection to any living memory of any land or any culture whatsoever. It's mass-produced shit from some factory in China and then some random shady distillate, you know? And then eventually they might graduate, you know, and get something better, you know? But even when I was growing up with chillums, my first time smoking was absolutely some plastic-ridden fucking soap bar and stuff. So there's always going to be this curve, and like before people start demanding like a better quality product, right? But it's so much harder to get to that point when you're on vape pens and on concentrates, because there is no traditional, like the only traditional concentrates would, like I said, would not pass a COA, even if we modernized with millions of dollars of investment the production facilities in the growing regions, we wouldn't see a product, I think, that can pass a test across the board. And not only that, but the modernization will change the traditional process a lot, right? So, for example, like in cheese making or in wine, like in countries like America that are much more newer countries that have, you know, they got a load of laws about hygiene and stuff that we don't have in Europe, because a lot of cheese is made in objectively unsanitary conditions. In fact, America made French cheese illegal because it contains live bacterial cultures that you could get sued over if you ate and got sick. So in our system in Europe, we've introduced a certain amount of laxity, a certain amount of flexibility in how we approach our traditional products. We understand that part of what makes it a traditional product is a kind of objectively unsanitary conditions.
And those imperfections too, right?
Yeah, and so we've codified those into our legal system, which has allowed our traditional products to hang on, where the traditional products of lots of other countries have got. Because think about it, right? Like, so you really want to tell me like France and stuff is like the be-all, end-all of food? Like there's like really cool, interesting like pâtés and terrines being made in like places like Laos and but then you come across them on, like, for example, a YouTube travel show, and they're like, look at this crazy, disgusting meat paste. I can't believe the locals would eat it. And you're like, that is the same shit that we do in France, just in poverty. And we've deemed that unsanitary, and thus it goes extinct. No one's ever going to hear about that fucking weird meat paste they make in Laos, but everybody's going to hear about the meat paste we make in France. And it's partly, yeah, right. And so I'm actually very cynical about, and very pessimistic about this trend towards concentrates. I certainly see some upshots and some positives, but largely I see it completely removing the market for traditional products and creating an extremely strong economic incentive and pressure away from traditional production systems. So you talked a lot about, or a little bit about self-determination. And I think that that's really important. The farmer needs to have a reason to grow Beldia. If his daughter can go to a better school and have a nice piano or whatever because he can grow critical as opposed to Beldia, he's going to do it. Like, why the fuck would anybody accept them? So there has to be an economic incentive for these products to survive, unfortunately, because they no longer exist within a purely social, cultural context outside of the capitalist economy, right? And again, due to the prohibition, there's been this sort of transition into it. And so I'm a little bit worried because I have not been to the reef, but I've heard a lot about the problems with the irrigation and with the dust and everything else. And I really don't know how they're going to solve that product such that they're going to be able to continue making a traditional product and maybe potentially export it on a global, market, because farms that are, better equipped and produce a more modern product in more sanitary conditions are just so much more profitable, and it's just an easier product to distribute. And the current sort of legislation that we have all over the world as far as cannabis goes is extremely stringent and strict, because we just came from prohibition where cannabis is being adulterated and is covered in poop.
Right.
So of course the regulatory authorities are like, let's clean this shit up. Great, in a way. But
yeah,
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I smoked a lot of ass hash and those little chocolate balls, like, it's fucking great. I loved it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I think that it's just a natural progression, and we'll see what, with every agricultural commodity, there's always a bottom line to meet, and people needs to be profitable doing it. And unfortunately, it's steering them towards, but there are some really good people who preserve, and who I think this is kind of where culture steps in. And this is where culture is important in a way where it's helping steer. If things go too far, it's kind of bringing it back. And if it goes too far one way, it's bringing it back. Totally. I think, and we start to see a lot of this word pop up, formulation. Recently with the new Schedule 3, the legalization in Morocco. I was doing some research, and I'm starting to see more labs like claiming formulations and stuff like this. This like a buzzword, like trying to contain this plant into a dosage. If you take X amount, you will feel X amount, and it's just not how it works. And we all know that. Those of us who've been close to cannabis for many years, we know that it's not the case. You can smoke the same thing, you're just a little bit tired and you're gonna sleep, and you can smoke the same thing, you're less tired, and you're like, all of a sudden you're hyper focused. But they're just trying to just really, and this is leading us to what? This is leading us to isolation. It's leading us to like we're gonna isolate THCA, and we're gonna isolate CBD, and we're gonna separate all these terpenes, and we're gonna go back at the end, and we're gonna have put a patent on it because now we put it all back together for you to be able to like dose at 30 milligrams. You know what I mean? And this is back again. It's like it's putting us back into this system that's why it was illegal from the first place, because they just couldn't allow the farmer to have that freedom, to have that power to produce this plant and offer it to people, you know. So now that they could formulate and further control, and we all know, people who are in the cannabis industry know that's a failed that is a failed model. Yeah, as soon as you start to mess with Mother Nature, it just tells you, nope, sorry, it's not gonna work. We tried it with Marinol, it didn't work. You know, it's not gonna work. It's not gonna work. The CBD isolate did not work. And we all know, but I guess, you know, maybe some people don't know, people who are watching, and or maybe people are who are making the laws, they don't know that once we start to isolate all these compounds, they just don't bind to
They lose
receptors
their
the way they used
synergist.
to.
They lose their synergistic effects, and there's something in the binding process that is missing. When you unbind those compounds in the form that they're in, and then you try to recombine them, you're missing something. You've essentially
So I'm happy.
taken away what's binding them together, and tried to recombine them, and you're missing what bound them
You're
together.
missing the big picture. And I'm happy that Morocco has emphasized on Beldia and emphasized on the fact that it's much more full spectrum. And a matter of fact, when I talk to some like older crowd people in Morocco, they consider Beldia not cannabis. That's a whole other thing, right? They're like, oh no, they're not the
Interesting.
same plant. They're not the same plant. It's not the same.
Same in Sri Lanka, same in India.
That's
Like-
interesting.
Yeah, they're local, and then Kush or whatever they call it. But like in Sri Lanka, for years they actually had different laws for imported weed versus local weed. Yeah. So that's really interesting to hear you mention it's the same in Morocco, because it seems to be a little bit universal that in these older traditional cultures they don't see their. Well, I mean, it's kind of obvious. We've all been saying it, haven't we? We're like, this weed ain't the same as it used to be.
It ain't the same.
But, yeah. But they were like they were pretty explicit about it.
But sometimes they catch me off guard. I'm like, it's like they're talking about peppers and tomatoes, you know? It's like, they're not the same. I'm like, yeah, I know, but like, they're the same. Like, no. Beldia is different. Keef is different. And they're right. It's different. It's not different, but it's different. Right?
Yeah.
And all thanks to its many generations, the generational preservation of the gene pool in its totality versus in its like just one or the other, or selective selections of like, okay, we're like this profile, we're gonna stick with this profile, and then that's all we're getting is this profile. And when you make hash, you're just getting a piece of the picture, you're not getting the whole thing. So I think the emphasis on Moroccan laws to only allow Beldia to grow and CBD rich cultivars to grow, which is, I guess, type 2 or type 3. At first, it kind of was a bit strange to me. Like, like when we talk with friends in Morocco, I'm like, well, how are they going to know? Like, I can take a Beldia and cross it, and what did they? So I'm finding out that they're like fully mapping the genome, and they're trying to select these like markers that makes the Beldia. So we're gonna start to see a lot more those who are interested in. Yeah, those who are interested in like.
I did not know that was going on. What the fuck? That's crazy. That's so good.
Yeah. So I think because they figured, like, cause that was my question every time. I'm like, they look the same. I can get a cultivar that's like doesn't have any laterals and that grows almost the same and blah blah blah, but it's not Beldia and it's a hybrid. And they're like nobody had answers until like I started doing a little more research because I'm trying to figure out how they're gonna realize that it's Beldia. And so I guess now they're really trying to map the genome and they're trying to see what are the dominant cannabinoids, what are the secondary metabolites, what are the terpenes that make Beldia,
Wow.
and I think they're trying to
Hmm.
kind of extract it and kind of run tests and say, okay, Beldia should hit these things. It should hit these levels of THC, these primary terpenes, these monoterpenes got to come first. These ciscoterpenes got to come after. Things like that of that nature. I think they're still trying to figure it out. I need to do more research.
Awesome. When you do find out, please let us know, because I think everybody would probably love to hear about it and do another show. Certainly,
definitely.
as soon as that paper comes out, I'm gonna put all that information on the Landrace wiki. I can't wait to see because if what you're saying, if it happens on any sort of time frame, it'll be the first ever traditional production zone to map its land races. Thailand just didn't. I don't know. Maybe they did, and I just didn't hear about it. I didn't see it, but I think they tried to, but I didn't sort of see anything anywhere near as sort of well developed as what you're describing.
And this is all thanks to the farmers who, when we went to those colloques in Tangier, early 2016-17, they made the emphasis on Beldia, they made the emphasis on the regions, they made the emphasis on the terroir. They probably didn't get everything they wanted, but they pushed it so far to get somewhere, because they knew if they didn't do any of that, next thing they're gonna find a region somewhere in the south or in the central Morocco that grows maybe better yields, better production, probably not the same type. They're gonna bring in more polyhybrids. Maybe they're gonna. So they were really like saying, you know what? And I think that's probably these over demands kind of made it where when they crafted the laws, the legalization in Morocco, they were like, okay, well, we're gonna start with Beldia. If you have Beldia, you're allowed to grow. If you want to import CBD rich cultivars, you can, but that's where it stops. Like that's why when you see all these farms in Morocco growing Cali genetics, they're not licensed, and they won't get the license to do that because they don't allow polyhybrids and hybrids there. And that's kind of goes towards what you were saying. It's going to help preserve the Beldia. That's on one end. On the other end, Beldia, the way the Beldia grows, because it flowers early and the hybrids flower late, there's always this how can I say it? It's kind of out of sync with how males pollinate. So it will already be kind of well further into flower while the hybrid males are showing, and by the time they show, it's almost time to harvest the Beldia. And even if it gets pollinated, it's a little bit too late for the seeds to formulate. There's a little bit of that, not fully, but then there is also looking into triploids. There are Moroccan scientists, people that are actually working on, that's a whole other topic, on getting into triploids seeds, Beldia triploids, so they can grow it without having that pollen impact and having basically seedless Beldia that might be beneficial for the farmers.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm starting to think when the fuck I need them. Is it? You said it was less good time to go in the summer as opposed to winter.
Depends what you're trying to do. Yeah, if you If you want to have the full hash experience, definitely go towards the end or early spring, and you'll know, because when you walk through the valley, you hear ta 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 ta. Everybody's sifting. You'll hear it. You'll
That's
you'll
what
hear it. Yeah,
that's what one of the
The
comments
drums
was
of
saying that
Katama.
before. Yeah, exactly.
that's
He
the
was like,
cue.
follow the
That,
sounds of the drums.
right. Follow the drums. That's the cue, man. When you hear that, you're like, ah, yes, ta 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 ta. I'm like, all right, it's the right time to be here.
Mm. So cool, so cool.
But yeah,
Well, on that note, y'all, I have
Yeah,
kids begging for night. So
perfect
I
timing.
am going to say the next time we all meet up, we definitely have to talk about the pollen and you know, and the Beldia growth structures and stuff like that. I think that's a
Yes,
great, you know, ending for us here and a great segue into the next conversation. So let's
absolutely.
all keep in touch. You know,
thank you.
Saj, we'll definitely be talking. The
Thanks for
next time we
having me.
come on, maybe we could do a giveaway. You know,
Sure.
and then
Of course.
you know, we'll get together and talk about that, and then Louise, you
I'd
know,
love to give away. Yep.
I
Saj,
That's
think
could you tell us where to find your music? Because some people in the comments were asking where to find your music.
sajmoredub.com.
Wait, you make
S
dub
A
music?
Yes, yes.
Oh,
I've been
fucking
touring. Yeah,
sick. Sick.
yeah.
I was actually gonna say the two of yous, I think, need to you know, hook up and talk, you know, after this,
Awesome. Thank you
and
so
then
much. Yeah,
you
no,
know,
for sure. I had a lovely conversation. I've learned so much. Thanks for sharing your experience as well with the wine and the sommelier and the cheese, and yeah, it's amazing. But yeah, those who want to listen to what I do, definitely on SoundCloud. You can find me on SoundCloud, and my website has all the links. Is Saj Moore. Moore is Moor dub.com. And yeah, I've worked with a lot of Jamaicans, St. Croix artists, a lot of dub. I did a couple albums with the Scientist from Jamaica.
Are you serious? What?
I was heavily involved. A little less now. I still have releases here and there. I'm having releases here and there, but
Dope.
I got a lot of music to release. It's gonna, and a matter of fact, the latest album called "Become" with Simrit, an artist, world music artist, and some of the musicians are like the same musicians that produced for Midnight and Akabeka. And we made a great album together. It's check it out if you have a chance. It's called Simrit, featuring dub creatives, and the title of the album is named Become.
Awesome. Wish we had some horns, some dub horns to
to
spam.
play out.
Totally.
Right. Heck
Hey,
yeah. Well, thank you guys very much.
yeah.
Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say what you were saying, man. So I'll let you say it.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for coming on. We appreciate it, and thanks to everybody that came and watched. Like, I don't know how if you understand how much we appreciate, you know, y'all watching. Yes, we love to have conversations, but to know other people love to have the conversations with us is fulfilling for us. So thank you very much, and we look forward to doing this again. So have a great night,
Thank you.
y'all.
Thank you very much for inviting me. We'll talk soon.
Have a
See
great
Ciao.
one.
you.
Bye bye.